welcome to Old Village School. This is our June 27th, 2023 regular Board of Education meeting. Welcome to everyone. We are buzzing with excitement over our spring athletic awards. We are going to get to those as soon as humanly possible, but we do have some sort of preliminary things to get through first. But we'll start tonight with our Pledge of Allegiance. If you all rise. And join me, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much and welcome again. That brings us to number 3 on our agenda. That is our roll call. Dr. Campbell Boytel.
Yes. President Lindsay Wilson.
Yes, here.
Vice President Sarah Prescott. Here. Treasurer Lisa McIntyre. Here. Trustee James Mazurek.
Here.
Trustee Karen Meyer. Here. And Trustee Melissa Stewart. Here. And Kim Campbell Boytel, Secretary. I am here.
Excellent. Thank you so much. That brings us to number 4, the adoption of our agenda, and I will hand it over to Ms. Prescott, please.
Thank you. It is motion 128. I move that the agenda be adopted as presented.
Support. So I have a motion properly presented by Ms. Prescott and supported by Mr. Mazurek. Any discussion needed on the adoption of our agenda? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Thank you so much for that. That brings us to number 5 on our agenda, our consent resolution. So just for the number of folks in the public, I'll give this a 30-second introduction. These are items, and you'll see the long list there, and it might even continue on to another page. These are items that we have discussed in previous meetings or in subcommittee or have, had a lot of backup information to digest on our own prior to this meeting. So usually there's not a lot of discussion that's needed on these items, and that's why we have placed them on consent agenda. Ms. Prescott, do the honors.
All right, it is motion 129. I move that the board accept the consent agenda items for approval as presented. A, minutes of the June 13th, 2023 Board of Education meeting. B, overnight and or out-of-state field trip request. B1 is NHS AP Environmental Science trip to Oscoda, Michigan from October 1st to the 3rd, 2023. B2 is the NHS varsity baseball camp in Vero Beach, Florida from March 22nd to the 30th, 2024. C is 5C, approval of Claire Brick to the Wayne Risa Parent Advisory Committee. 5D, 2023-2024 Board of Education meeting and Committee of the Whole calendar. Bless you. 5E is a grant to grant DTE an easement within the previously granted easement originally granted to the city of Novi in 2006. And 5F, Desmos Middle School math materials through Amplify with a price adjustment of $22,000.
Support.
So I have a motion properly presented by Ms. Prescott and supported by Ms. McIntyre. Any further discussions needed on our consent resolutions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So that passes. Thank you so much for that. And that brings us quickly, I believe, to our communications.
Yes.
Campbell Boytel.
I acknowledge that we have received communications at npsboe@northvilleschools.org.
Thank you so much. And as promised, number 7, our superintendent's report.
Love the efficiency, President Wilson.
That's right.
I think we have a room full of people who are here to celebrate.
That's right.
And I know we have a video that we're going to queue up as well. But before we do that, I just want to, I'm going to take this because there we go. Hey, I like the cordless action on this. You know, as I look at this room, I was fortunate enough to be in this very meeting last year, and I didn't fully understand the joy I was about to experience and come into. And that joy was found when I would stand in the dugout, when I would walk a hole on the golf course, when I would watch each of our teams compete or even practice with them. I haven't gotten in a boat yet, but I did jump on an erg and actually pound it out with you guys for a little bit. And to me, one of the beautiful things about a community public school district is that we give each child in our community the opportunity to compete and to get after it. What I saw, and I think I put this in Twitter, I love the fierce grace that I got to see on all the fields of play. You competed as hard as any teams I've been part of myself or had the privilege to watch. You always did it with grace, tenacity, kindness. We don't compete to lose. None of us do. However, it reminds me of this beautiful speech by Giannis from Milwaukee, which I'm sure many of you have seen, and Coach in this room and I have talked about it. A reporter asked him after they got bumped from the playoffs, "So what's it like? Do you consider this season a failure?" He was awesome. Now he's Nigerian. I lived there for a year, so I was really proud of that Nigerian connection. He looked at the reporter and said, failure? Michael Jordan played 15 years in the NBA, won 6 NBA titles. Are those 9 other seasons a failure? No. It's all part of the process, and it's why we play. So thank you. I know that our AD couldn't be here tonight, but he has a video for you, and I know that there are coaches in this room. We are sitting in a room with state champions, national champions. It is amazing. I've done this work for 30 years. I do not take any of this for granted. You are special. And what most people can't see, and Muhammad Ali said this, you don't see. What time do you guys get up to do rowing when you practice on the erg? What time?
Normal school day.
Okay.
But Saturdays, 7.
About 7 a.m. You guys are out there, right? Getting after it. And so many of you, no one will ever see the work you put in to get to where that you got. And where you got was the ability to compete in the hardest conference in the state of Michigan. KLAA West, undoubtedly, top to bottom, the fiercest competitions. Every game for everybody in this room, every competition is the top echelon of it. And please know we recognize that as well. So thank you all. I can't wait to hear from your coaches, but I believe we have a video.
Good evening. I apologize for not being at the board meeting tonight as I already had vacation planned on Lake Michigan. I'd like to thank Dr. Weber, his central office team, and the Board of Education for having us here tonight to celebrate our spring sports teams that did so well. This year we had multiple championships, many All-State and All-American athletes, and most importantly, many KLA scholar athletes. This year, like I always say, is not normal. We shouldn't take it for granted. We had great success, and that is because of our outstanding student athletes and coaches. Congratulations to all the spring teams there this evening to celebrate their success. We will honor and celebrate 7 of our spring teams, including 2 of them that won state championships. We will start off with girls tennis and their successful season.
All right, thank you guys for having us. I'm Coach Fardulionis. This is Aisha, Victoria, and Michelle from our team. Thank you to the board for always supporting our needs, everything that you guys do for us. Dr. Weber, thank you for participating in the Be Nice program. When I loved what you said there. I know not everybody got a chance to say, but I want to personally thank you for what you said to all of us coaches. It was really great. So thank you so much. We had a regrowth here this year, and we're going to go through a little bit of a regrowth next year. So bringing up the honest quote, everybody said, oh, you finished 9th in the state. That's okay. And it's like, no, it's good. It's really good. It's very good. And, do we consider that failure? Absolutely not. We had 7 seniors graduate. Our team was full of last year, 7 seniors, 7 juniors. We lost 7 seniors. We will lose 7 seniors again this year. So we have a young, growing team that we had a lot of success with this year. We didn't worry about the failures. We improved every single time that we competed. We did really super well. We came in second. We lost to Novi in conferences and only to Novi in regionals. We have a goal to get that title back. So our goal this year was to finish in the top 10 at states, and we came in at 9. So we reached our goal. We were very happy with that. We did a lot of TED Talks. I don't know if you've ever played tennis before, but it's kind of, you're out there on your own, and it's kind of a mentally challenging sport too. So bringing some TED Talks in and talking about being a competitor and, being fierce, like you said, is part of the tennis program. So we worked on that a lot too. So I was very proud of the team this year. Looking forward to a lot of success in the next couple of years. And thank you again for having us. Yeah. Oh, and Dr. Rowe, by the way, I always have an extra tennis racket in my bag, so you are more than welcome to step out on the court with any of these guys.
I've seen how your women hit a tennis ball. There is no way, because we gotta keep the face intact. And I'm not gonna get hurt out there.
Yeah,
Thank
but
you.
that's it. But thank you guys for having us so much. Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, thank you so much. Okay. Oh. Thank you.
And in the spirit of tradition we started at the beginning of the year, if you can, I would ask you to stick around through the whole athletic program, and then before you leave, ladies, don't leave us. What I'd like to do is just have the athletes come back behind, if you can. If you can, I get it, you got work or something. But I'd like every athlete in the room to be able to stand behind the board so we can do a large group picture with the athletes on the board.
Oh, I'm ready. Soccer. I didn't bring everybody. Hi, I'm Coach Janine Reddy. This is my second year here at Northville. Some of my players is Avery, Elena, Whitney, Caroline, and Simran, sorry. I have 23 players, but kind of, Brian said not to bring everybody. Kind of. No, I don't know. Well, we just had a few come. So just to thank everybody here for supporting athletics. It's pretty amazing here at Northville, and I've only been here for 2 years. So it's awesome to see you guys take so much pride in athletics. So I really appreciate that. I know they do. Thank you, Dr. Weber, for coming to the games and kind of huddling over their pep talk and rooting them on and traveling far to come watch our semifinal game this year. That's pretty amazing. Our season this year was, if you ask them, they're probably still a little upset and sad, but I don't know if they realize how hard it is to make it to a state. You know, this group was in the finals last year, and to make it to the state semi their second year, how hard that is. And if they look, across the state, that you don't find too many teams that do that back to back. So I'm extremely proud of them. They should be proud of themselves. I think they're still upset or sad, maybe a little bit. They are.
You can
That's
see it.
okay. They are. I know, it's hard, but
First goal in Grand Ledge, that was kind of, come on, that was like the third corner, and that was sloppy. Our goalie, amazing. You're
she
amazing.
was absolutely
You were like
amazing. Amazing that game, yeah.
And then
Every
we
game.
press on the second to make up, because that was
Yeah.
this is the game. You guys know that?
Yeah. You probably can't tell them that either, but unfortunately. A couple of things I they don't hear very often because I don't like to bring up numbers is, they've lost 2 games in 2 years. So that's pretty crazy for a team. And 2, big games, obviously, sorry. But
At least you're over it.
I'm not. I never get over them, but last year was obviously penalty kicks, and this year is just, it was a really good game against a very good team. So, a couple other things we have a couple freshmen on our team this year, and then every other person is a scholar athlete on our team. So we can't count freshmen as scholar athletes. So, but their grade points were high enough to be that. So that is extremely impressive. I know how hard they all work in school, and that's super important for us. Focus on that as much as soccer, and they all know that. So kudos to you guys for obviously doing so well in school. All 7 of our seniors were all state academic team members. Our overall GPA for our group is 3.71 for 23 girls, which is pretty amazing. I think 11 of them have over a 4.0. I know you guys don't want to hear all these weird numbers, but I know all this about you. I know. The biggest, this year they won the KLA, our division, they won their conference, they won the district, they won their region, which is pretty impressive. So I'm super proud of them. Next year, I pretty much have my whole team back, and they are, I know, angry already and ready to go for next year. So I look forward to it. It comes quickly, and I already missed them, and it's been like a week. So, but thank you guys, thank you girls for everything that you do, and thank you guys for supporting us. So that's all I have.
too far. There we go. Girls track.
Good evening. I'm Coach Dalton. For those of you who don't know me, I coach our boys and girls track team. We'll do them all together. First, Dr. Weber, thank you for how you started the meeting. The importance that athletics plays to the kids in this room cannot be underestimated. It is where they find themselves at the high school and place such a value in their overall education. This year we had 360 boys and girls on the track and field team. The kids that are up here make up some of our kids that went on to the state finals. I'll get to you guys in a second. Our girls on the track, they were division champs for the 9th year in a row. They were conference champs for the 9th time in the last 11 years and regional champions for the 11th straight season. Not to be outshined, our boys were also division, conference, and regional champs. So I call that it's a clean sweep of the trophies from division, conference, up to the regional. We had 22 athletes qualify for the state finals. 11 of them earned all-state honors, including the 5 in front of you. Our girls 4x8, 2 of them are here tonight. Cassie Garcia, Cassie, give them a little wave. And Ella Christensen, they finished 8th place in the girls 4x8. Cassie as well, in the girls 2 mile or 3,200, finished 8th for all-state honors. David Whitaker, Dave, give him a wave. Dave is one of our seniors that will be losing. Both Cassie and Ella come back. Dave is off to MIT next year. So he's a smart kid and also is going to be on their cross country and track team. He was all-state in our 4x8 relay and also the 800. Deepak, who could not be here tonight, he was all-state in high jump. He also played tennis, was an all-state tennis player for us. He's off to the University of Indiana for education and track and field. The last group I'll touch on is our boys 4x8. They got a lot of notoriety and rightfully so. They were state champs. They have the now record for fastest time ever by a Michigan high school boys 4x8 team. And they went off to Philadelphia for a New Balance national meet where they finished 1st. Their state record time, for those in the room, it's a total 2-mile race. Every kid runs a half a mile. They ran 7 minutes and 35 seconds. So, pretty incredible. We're missing one of them tonight. One of them could not be here, but he was quoted in one of the papers as saying this group never lost when they wore the Northville orange and black in a 2-year time period. So very, very impressive. Brock Malikel on the end as a senior, will be losing him as well. He'll be off to serve a church mission next year. As I touched on Dave, and then Brendan Herger as a junior, so he comes back. Brendan was also all-state in the boys 800-meter relay. The boys 800-meter run, where he holds our school record. Lastly, I do got to recognize our coaching staff with a group of 360 kids. It can't be done with 1, 2, or 3 people. So we had 12 coaches this year, and my brother's in the room in the back, and he hates people looking at him, but yeah, give him a wave. Truly thankful for our entire coaching staff that makes it possible for these kids. Thank you so much. Lastly, and I got to put Matt on the spot, our boys golf coach is a Northville alum. I've known him since kindergarten and super proud of those boys. So Matt and boys golf, congrats on the state championship.
Dr. Weber, I forgot something.
Go ahead.
I'm gonna embarrass them. It's gonna be, I just talked about a whole group instead of individuals. So these are our 2 all-state team members, so, that are here today. So, all right, very good.
Boys baseball. Anyone here from the baseball team? Next up's then rowing.
player from the boys baseball team,
Oh, is that right?
which is gone.
Yeah.
My name is Nick Bix. I'm the head coach and director of rowing for Northville Rowing Club. I've been the head coach for 7 years. Just a little bit about our team. We have 91 high school athletes. We currently have a roster of 45 middle schoolers as well, all from the Northville area. First, again, I would like to, like everybody else, thank the board for all your support, everything that you guys have done for us. I'm going to put them on the spot, have all of our athletes here introduce themselves and let them know what boat they were in for either the state championship or their national championship.
I'm Saj Man. I was in 3V for the state championship.
My name is Avery DiFrancesco. I'm a junior, and I was state champion in the men's 2v8.
My name is Megan Gibbons. I was state champion in the women's varsity quad and also national champion. My name is Allison Phillips, and me and Megan went to nationals together.
I'm Morgan Sokolowski, and I was in the freshman quad at nationals.
So it's, again, just a small part of our team. We, like I said, have 91 athletes. This year we won the overall team points, which is we are the best team in the state. The men won their team points title as well, and the ladies were runner-up. These two ladies here won our very first national title for all the scholastic teams in the entire United States for SRAA. In the women's junior quad. Junior simply means that everybody in that race, there are no seniors. They can be freshmen, sophomores, or juniors, but they are the best women's quad at that level in the entire nation. We also took some men's boats. Our men's varsity 4 took 4th overall on the wrong side of about 0.3 of a second from taking 2nd. That same boat also went to Youth Nationals, which is a 2,000-meter race hosted by U.S. Rowing in Sarasota, Florida. They raced the straight 4, so they did not have a coxswain. They took 11th and were less than 0.5 second out of taking 9th overall in the nation, and they missed the grand final by 0.3 of a second, which would have put them in the A final first time ever. But again, great showing by all of our crews. This year as well, we started off very well in the fall. We went to Head of the Hooch Regatta, which is the 2nd largest regatta in the country, besides the Head of the Charles in Boston. And our men and women raced a combined boat. It was a mixed 8, and they actually won the Head of the Hooch in Tennessee in the U19 mixed 8 for the first time. So that was a great trip for us there as well. And then moving on to the spring, as I said, 3 state titles and 7 different boat titles. I couldn't list them all, and I think 3 or 4 more state runner-up boat titles. So they had an amazing season. It has been amazing to coach this crew, and they came back from a lot last year. Kind of a disappointing year, and then to come back and win a state title, and then also be top 3 team in the entire Midwest. We have the largest region in the entire nation, hosting 55 teams from 9 different states. We actually placed for the very first time 3rd overall in the entire Midwest. So again, a great group, great crews, great parents. Again, I want to thank Brian Samolsky for all of his work and everything he does for our team. And thank everybody who allows us to take over the hallway all winter long. A very important part of our training. They all hate it, but it's been great. So again, thank you guys very, very much.
Good turnout.
I'm glad he had them wait because the audience would dwindle down to nothing.
All right. Good evening, everybody. My name is Matt Lewicki. I'm the head golf coach at Northville High School here. In front of you are the 2023 MHSAA Division I state champions. An incredible accomplishment for this group of young men. They played fantastic all season. We've had some highlights not only on our varsity team this year, but also with our JV team this year, and I can go through just a couple of those real quick. Our JV team played in 7 invitational tournaments this season. They finished in the top 10 7 out of 7 times. In the top 5 out of 7 times, and had 2 wins, including a tournament out at Forest Lake and at the Kensington Invitational. Our JV team also finished 2nd place in the KLAA this year, and we had the individual runner-up in the JV KLAA tournament in JJ Rickard. So the future is bright for the team that we're losing, which is a special group of seniors for sure. To go through some of the highlights from the varsity season, we played in 13 invitational tournaments, not including our divisional matches with inside the KLAA West. We finished in the top 10 in 13 out of all 13 of those tournaments, in the top 5 in 10 out of those 13 tournaments, and had 2 wins, including the state championships and also the Corporal B Invitational out at American Dunes, which I think a lot of these boys will sit here and tell you that tournament was probably harder to win than the state finals. That field was incredible. It includes all of the best teams across every division, not only Division I. So being able to win those 2 tournaments throughout the season was a fantastic accomplishment. We finished in 3rd place in our region, which, if anybody knows anything about high school golf, our region is the most difficult of anything to get through. The 3 teams that qualified out of our region all finished in the top 4 in the state finals, 1st, 3rd, and 4th. And there were some other teams in that region that probably would have been in the top 5 or 6 in the state finals that wouldn't qualify. So it was a pretty incredible accomplishment. We finished 2nd place in the KLAA. And also 2nd place in the KLAA West Division, the toughest conference and toughest division in all of high school golf. We have the individual KLAA conference champion, Ryan Gallagher, won that tournament over 36 holes throughout the preseason and postseason event. And then we had a couple of really low round accomplishments this year. Mason Sokolowski in regionals fired a 4 under 68 to finish in 3rd place individually and help carry us to qualify. And Greg Braun, who was the 9-hole match master this season, didn't shoot a 9-hole score in any match higher than 36 this season, including a 31, 2 32s, a 34, and a 35. His 31 out at Dunham Hills was the scoring record for the front 9 in competition on that golf course this season. So pretty incredible play from these boys all season. Yeah, give it up for them. I mean, these state champions. And I just wanted to thank everybody again. This is my first year here coaching at Northville. As Tim mentioned,
Heck of an expectation.
I guess so. I mean, it was all these guys. I wish I could take much of the credit, but being a Northville alum, to be able to come back and to coach where I graduated and where I played high school golf was a pretty big honor for me. And this was just, obviously quite the accomplishment to throw on top of that. I couldn't be more thankful of Mr. Smolsky and the athletic staff and all of the support from everybody, in the school board and the administration, everything like that. We couldn't do it without it. We get whatever we ask for, and we thank you guys very much for that. So
You guys don't lose many golf balls, so it's easy.
No doubt.
Is that everybody? So we could get a picture? Could the coaches and the students could all come up and stand behind our school board as a 5. Come on, thanks. Is there a general slide we can throw up on
We'll have a good time.
Yeah, maybe.
Wow, I'm coming.
Coming around this room over here.
No, you're good. You just gotta get them in front. We want to get everybody in pictures. Everybody make sure your face can be seen.
All right. Might become a little bit more non-golf team, just a little bit, because
You're gonna be in it, right? I keep standing in a chair. Okay, good.
So, assistant track coach back there, yes, you would have to be seen on the camera. I got them more about. Is it true on the track team, you get fire extinguishers when you finish the 4x800, your shoes, they like doing. And then I got a call for the rowing team from Kensington Metro Park. Apparently you're too fast, you're evaporating the water when you row. So if you guys could take it easy on that.
Wait, Dr. Weber, are you?
I'm gonna take a big picture right now, it's gonna be good, and this is about all of you. So what I'd like you to do is look up. Thank you for making us all so proud, and I know for the board, I know it's a privilege for them to serve. I have the pleasure of getting to know them through the year. You bring them joy, our parents joy, we joy. So on 3, 1, 2, 3, and then we're gonna do one more. 1, 2, 3, and I was gonna say we do a knee hug one, which is easy for the girls soccer team. I caught you smiling. I caught you smiling. So, all right. Thank you.
Hang on a second. There's a couple of parents. Hold on. Come on. Grab the pictures.
Awesome job, guys.
Awesome, yeah.
I should have the final design. Hopefully, well, have a good summer, be safe, take care of yourself.
I think so, yeah.
I adore Simran. She was Lane's like first friend when we moved here.
Right, That was awesome.
You know, seeing the camaraderie amongst all of them, and the fact that truthfully is, you know, student athletes and you know, the efforts they have to put into, whether it's getting up at 7 in the morning or whatever, it teaches them life lessons. Everything you do in life requires effort, right? It requires practice. It requires persistence, diligence, dealing with ups and downs. And I think it's such a great piece that takes them on to every other piece of their life in that. So it's just, you know, really awesome as a board to watch all of these kids come through here and listen to things like, yeah, you know, we had 23 kids and we had, we had an average of a 3.71 grade point average. And that's because we couldn't count some of them because it would have been higher, right? Isn't that just, you know, incredible?
It's amazing.
It's amazing.
The
So
fastest kids in the country
Yeah.
in multiple sports.
They ran 2 miles.
I think you should have done a better on
Right.
rowing. It wasn't so much the evaporation, is that you broke the no wake zone, right? And that's not allowed.
We got to complain on the no wake.
I do personally feel like I have to mention though, as far as I could tell out of that list, the teams that were not mentioned were the boys and girls lacrosse and softball. And as a lacrosse parent, I just want to give a shout out to those teams. Both those teams are no cut. They're the only spring team sports that are no cut. And just to Jim's point, even though they weren't here tonight, just like every one of those 300 kids on the track and field team, what they get out of it is so much more valuable, lifelong lessons. I ran track and field, I lost way more
races whenever one. But I will be running the 2 mile in Boyne City on Tuesday. So,
Okay, go,
Karen.
Try and
Seven
go, try and go 7 minutes, 30 seconds.
Yeah.
And let us know if you make it.
Let me know. I will not be getting the award when I get back. Age group medal. There you go. No, probably not. I'm the top of my age group, so maybe next year.
I'll just point out a couple of things. One is, and I remember this from our bond meeting, 70% of our kids plus participate in these athletics. I mean, I think that's awesome. Dr. Weber, you're right on. You can't just take this for granted, right? This is something, this is just part of the programming here, right? The kind of the success that we're having. Well, I thought one thing that was really cool that I noticed is that you can have kids are doing this 3 or 4 years in their high school career, and you could have one student, and it sounds like many of them could be on 1 year a team that's rebuilding, right? We didn't have, you heard it a couple of times, we're in a growth year, we're in a rebuilding year, we didn't have the success that we wanted this year, but then the next year they bounce back and they're division regional champs, or they're going to the states, or they're winning the states. It's pretty cool to have that kind of to go back, the thrill of victory, the agony of defeat, right? And kind of 1 4 year kind of section. So I just thought that was pretty, I've never observed that or thought about it, but I think it's a great life lesson. They're not just winning all the time, and I think there's something about that really strikes a chord with me. But
After the soccer game in Grand Ledge, I asked myself, should I go over or not? And you just, in those moments, you go with your gut. And I went over. I just told the girls, like, I loved them and respected them because of what I saw. And this is a couple weeks later, and you saw they were still not happy. But everyone in this room knows, because we all have miles on our chassis, that life doesn't always work out the way you want it. And sometimes it just is hard. But without pain in life, you can't feel real joy.
Yeah.
And we compete because we want to win. You don't compete because you don't want to win. We have it. And they are very good lessons, Mr. Mazurik, and very hard ones at times.
Yeah.
And you could read it on some of their body language. But what I hope, and what's important for, I believe, board members to say as well, and the community is, we don't take it for granted. We don't expect championship after championship. It's not realistic, and we don't want to put that on our kids. But if they want to work for it, and they want to put the hustle in, and the parents want to do everything extra that they do. I have a person in my office who is up delivering bananas at 6 o'clock in the morning to the football team. And I know each of you in other ways to support, so thank you. And then finally, I just want to say, I'm grateful that this board allows me to be a strident advocate and ally for public education, because I'm going to say this, just like I've said about Cook. We at Cook School, we serve students that charters and parochials would never serve. And in the Northville Public Schools, the only thing you have to do to have a crack at competing in a top echelon athletic program is live here. That's it. There is not a fee, a tuition that you're going to pay. And you have an opportunity with the programming we have to really be part of a top flight, top echelon academic and sports program. And I'm grateful a year into a board that allows me to speak that truth, because I believe it is the truth. And I'm proud of what we do. And I'll send those pictures to all of you tonight. Thank you.
Yeah, it's funny. I think we should celebrate the losses just as well as we celebrate the successes, because at the end of the day, when you win, it's great and you celebrate. But when do you really lose? Or when do you really learn? It's when you lose, because that's when you have to do that soul searching, right? What happened? What could I have done better? And so the things that make you better in life in that transition is those hard losses, because then you look at yourself, do some introspective and say, oh, I didn't practice as hard, or I didn't do this as hard, or I didn't do that. And that's what makes people better. And so, we tend to blow off losses, but I think we should celebrate the losses, because what our kids learn from them, right? And it makes them better. So there is something beneficial in every single piece, whether it's a win or loss, and let's celebrate.
And sometimes a simple realization that the team you played against is better.
Yeah.
And that is a bitter pill to swallow. It's all of us who've lost at something, right?
Absolutely right.
Thank you.
all right.
All right, so next up is Amy Prevo. with Northville Youth Network. And Amy can tell you a little bit more about herself, but just some of the basics. She's the director of Northville Youth Network. And she is here with her partner, Carrie and Sandro, and she's ready to present on an overview of Northville.
I'm going to give you a round of applause right up front, just because you're just as important as the other teams are.
You're a hard act to follow.
That's right. We love to have you come in.
Awesome. All right. Well, first of all, thank you for having us tonight. I love opportunities to share what we've been up to next door over the last year. And actually, I looked at my calendar and it was 2021 was the last time I was here. So I won't go into the whole my whole spiel about NYN because I think a lot of people here know what it is, but I'll cover some things in general. But then I really want to focus on what we consider our in-reach or our micro practice, because I think that's one of the things about NYN that a lot of people aren't that familiar with. But just to start off, as Beth mentioned, my partner in crime is Carrie Ann Sandriel, and she is with me every step of the way, every day. And I like to consider her as kind of the heart and soul of NYN because she does a lot of that one-on-one individual work with youth and families, and it's so impactful to them. So thank you, Carrie Ann. We are in our 36th year serving our community. So right around the time that I was born, NYN was born. I'm just kidding. I wish. So in 2019, we went through a strategic planning process that not only resulted in kind of completely redoing the way that we do things, but it allowed us to focus on who we wanted to be as an organization, what were some of our goals, what do we want to accomplish within our community, and we landed simply on working in partnership with community stakeholders to provide programs and services that support the physical, emotional, and social well-being of our youth. And we consider our partnership with Northville Public Schools as probably our most important partnership. So thank you for that. The planning process led us to develop guiding principles, simply healthy minds and bodies, positive relationships, connectedness and belonging, inclusive and culturally responsive, strategic and robust partnerships, and integrity and responsible stewardship. So these are the values that serve as our North Star that lead us in everything that we do. So you may know that NYN is a shared service between the city and the township of Northville. So we're very similar to Parks and Rec in that regard. We serve all youth that live within the Northville Public Schools boundaries. Public school students, private school students, kids that live in Northville, kids that live in Noville, and maybe go to a private school outside of Northville. As long as a youth lives within the Northville Public Schools boundaries, they are eligible to receive our services. All of our services are free of charge to youth and families. The only program that we do have a fee for is camp, and that's because it's a pretty resource heavy program. We are funded by the shared services millage in the township, which is the same millage that Parks and Rec and Senior Services is on. The general fund from the city, and then through partial funding from Wayne County for our youth assistance program work that we do. And then we also receive a few donations here and there, which we're very grateful to. We serve under the City Council and the Board of Trustees, and we also, every department in the city and the township also reports to a board or a commission, and you'll see some familiar names up there. We have a wonderful, very supportive group of people that volunteer to serve on our commission and just support the work that we do. Carrie Ann and I are part-time employees. I report directly to the township manager, Todd Muchler. And then just a couple new differences, some changes. So Bridget Drzwicki works with us as our youth assistance program coordinator. We started that probably last fall, I believe. Prior to that, we were, you may be aware that we were a formal partner with the embedded behavioral health clinician with the Northville City and Township Police Department, and we shared that resource. We provided financial resource, and we also received some time and effort of that social worker's time. We did it for 1 year for a pilot to see how it worked out. We decided at the end of the year that we wanted to have someone who worked directly with us and could fit better into our schedule. Our services and our programs are pretty much scheduled. We meet with parents and youth in the evenings. We run programs in the evenings. Our Teen Talk, which this person facilitates, is in the evenings and is scheduled. And really the focus of that position is to be to serve the police departments and crisis response, so that they get a phone call at the drop of the hat and they got to leave and they got to go and handle a situation. So we have a contract person that works with us, and she's going to be with us through the end of August, and that's worked out really well for us. And then lastly, but not least, is our Northville Public Schools representative, Beth Santer. She also serves on our commission and supports us in that. The relationship that we have with Beth is really important because she provides us with kind of that 10,000 foot view of what's going on in the district. And then also because we work so closely in partnership with the school social workers and the counselors, and those folks report to Beth, that's been really helpful to help us kind of navigate those relationships. So we're just grateful to have the support of our 2 municipalities that we serve. When I first started, I did some benchmarking of other communities, and in both Oakland and Wayne County. And most communities, many, not all, do have a youth assistance program, which youth assistance, that term is used through the courts, family courts, and it's a court diversion related term. Most communities have a youth assistance program, which focuses solely on court diversion. And then some communities have some sort of behavioral health, wellness, well-being type of organization that does programs and services similar to ours. But there's not really, I did not find any community that had one entity that does all of that, but then also works very closely with our school district. So we're unique in that way. And I think that that's really one of the things that's contributed to our success. So we are pleased about that. So that's who we are. Moving to what we do, we have core programs and service areas. And I think they fall into 2 categories. So those that are above the line, I consider those our outreach programs. Those are the things that we do out in the community. Those are large group programs. Those are partnerships with our schools. And those are the things that I think a lot of people are really familiar with. And then below that line, we have our youth assistance program, case management, and resource referral. That's what I really want to focus on tonight, because I think that's those are kind of the hidden gems of our program. We consider those our in reach. Those are kind of our micro practice, where we work one-on-one with youth and families. So our outreach is certainly important, and we love what we do. Things like Wellness Wednesday, peer-to-peer at Meads, Makers Club at Hillside, our community presentations, our parent camp involvement, youth mental health first aid. One of the things that we are looking into, and I've had an initial conversation with Aaron about offering youth mental health first aid for our teachers, and free of charge, and they would get sketches. Are they called sketches? Sketches. So it's a really good professional development opportunity for our school staff. We're looking forward to that probably in the fall. We also, Camp Hillside, Camp Meads Mill, those are very popular, well-known programs. A couple of new things this year is Ridgewood Parent Support. Carrie Ann was instrumental in working with the PTA at Ridgewood. They wanted to put together a parent support group, so she went a couple times and helped them to get that off the ground. And the plan going forward is that they're going to work together with all of the elementary PTAs to have and kind of travel around to each elementary school. So we were able to help them build capacity in that regard. And then another, we've always done Overbooked over the last few years, which is our parent book club. This year we partnered with Hillside PTSA to partner and bring that to not just Hillside parents. It's open to everybody. So we plan to continue to do that. And then the work that we do with Northville Cares, which is to pull resources together within and outside our community to support our youth and families. These programs, these outreach programs, provide families and youth with opportunities for education, awareness, connection, and support to learn and grow. And I think that when people think of NYM, this is the connection that they make because some of their kids have participated in these type programs. But as I mentioned, what I think people aren't as familiar with is our in-reach programs, our micro practice, so to speak. And I want to highlight that tonight. I think personally, these are our most important programs and services. I think they're the most impactful because we're getting kids where they need the most help and support, the kids that are struggling, and we're able to provide that support for them. Really quickly, just to explain, so we call our youth assistance program because it's kind of tied to some of our county funding, but our youth assistance program is to provide support to law enforcement, city and township police departments through court diversion, juvenile court diversion. So in lieu of getting prosecuted or getting a ticket, the youth can participate in our youth assistance program and have that waived for them for low-level offenses. And then also to provide support to our schools for behavioral interventions. So kids that are not making the best choices in school, in lieu of a suspension or to get a reduced suspension, which we don't want kids sitting at home playing video games, mostly unsupervised. We want them participating in something, a program where they can learn about their choices and consequences and whatnot. So we provide the youth assistance program for our schools as well. Just to give you a quick run through, we get a referral from either a police officer or a principal or assistant principal. We contact the parent or caregiver within 24 to 48 hours, bring them in, bring the youth in, do an intake, learn about what's going on, what led up to the choices that they made, kind of get to know the kid in a holistic way. And then we develop an individual support plan, which are events, activities, services, programs that we put in place to help support them through the youth assistance program process. It could be participating in Teen Talk, which I'll talk about. It could be community service. It could be attending a substance use program. We have a health educator that comes in and talks to our kids who are referred for vaping. It could be just a variety of different outside programs and services. Sometimes it's restitution, financial restitution, if things like graffiti or destruction of property. And sometimes it's an apology, if it's appropriate, and whatnot. So we develop that individual support plan and then follow the youth as they meet all their requirements. I mentioned Teen Talk. Teen Talk is our 5-week risk reduction course that kids take. We have 2 sections. We keep the middle school kids in one and the high school kids in another. We do it in a group format. And it's just all about learning about their choices, their behaviors, their consequences, how their values line up or don't line up with their choices, what it means to be a victim and how their choices impact other people. And then one of the things that we started working on this year and will continue to work on is we're bringing in some elements of restorative justice framework into the Teen Talk program. So we will continue to work on that. And the other thing that we did this year, we got a number of referrals, mostly at the middle school level, regarding racial and cultural insensitivity. I'm sure you've all seen the monthly report that I provide, and you've seen those numbers. And so we decided that traditional Teen Talk was not an appropriate intervention for these kids. And so we took the time to develop a whole nother curriculum, 4 weeks on racial and cultural insensitivity. I used to work at University of Michigan. I still have a lot of colleagues there, and I vetted it through some of my colleagues in the program on intergroup relations, got some feedback. Carrie Ann and I and Bridget, we facilitated it in a group setting and got really, really good feedback from the youth that participated, just to get them to understand the things they say, the things they do matter, and how to think about what it means to be a person who's marginalized for whatever reason, race, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, disability, appearance, whatever it is. Put them, in their shoes, so they learn a little bit of empathy. They learn a little bit about community and what it means to be a member of community. They learn a little bit about themselves and their own identity and what makes them them and what makes other people other people, so that when they are insulting or saying inappropriate things or picking on people or harassing because of what they perceive are someone's differences, what that does to someone. And so hopefully they're able to internalize that and what that does. And then we also work on some what it means to be a member of a community and our role as a community member, and what community values are, and how we as a diverse community are stronger because of our differences. And then we also work on apologies, writing apology letters, and practicing those in front of a staff member. And they don't mail them to the their person that they were involved with, but just having them go through that process is really important and impactful. So I've talked to Beth, and we'll work on some ways, and we'll have to see what the referrals look like for next year and determine how we want to move forward and making this sustainable, so that we can continue this work. So that's pretty much our youth assistance program. It is voluntary. Kids and parents choose if they're going to participate. We can't make them participate. Some don't, not very often. Carrie Ann and Bridget are really, really good about convincing parents that this is a really good opportunity for their child to learn about the mistakes that they made and learn about how to make different choices. And most of our kids participate. We're really flexible. We meet them where they're at, and we do whatever we can to get them to that finish line so that they can complete their individual support plan. The other work that we do on a micro level is our case management service and our resource referral services, which I'll talk about first. Our resource referrals, it could be simply a parent calls on the phone and says, I think my child is going through something. They're in their room, they're withdrawn, they're not hanging out with friends. I'm not sure what's going on. I'd like for them to see a therapist or get into counseling. Do you have any recommendations? And Carrie Ann has a wealth of knowledge of practitioners and clinics in our community that she knows insurances. She knows who has a sliding scale for underinsured or uninsured people. She knows who specializes in what. She knows who's got a waiting list. And she offers families a few choices, and they then follow through and make some calls and to be able to get services for their child. It could be a school social worker or a counselor calling her. She has an excellent relationship with the school staff, and they can call her, email her anytime, and she'll be able to provide that information. She compiled some of that information in a document that she provided to the school staff to give out to parents with that, with some leads so that they can make those calls on their own. She knows also who specializes in certain areas, who is a therapist that specializes in video game addiction, who specializes in eating disorders, adolescent males and anger management, and she can put families in touch. So that's our referral services. And then our case management services, she works with families, with youth that are just experiencing a little bit more challenges. The cases are a little bit more complex or a little bit more comprehensive. There's much more layers to get to the bottom issue, and then she puts them in touch with whatever community resources are available to them, and then stays with them and just says, hey, she'll call back, she'll check in a few weeks later. Sometimes, things get on the right track and we don't hear from them. Sometimes they start and they sputter, and a month or two later we'll hear, she'll hear back from a parent. But she stays with them. So she's, that having that resource in our community, I think is so important. She's a gem to those families. For the data nerds here, which I consider myself to be one, I took a look at some of our data. And one of the things that at the township, our fiscal year runs January 1st. And so pretty much everything that I do is calendar year. So when you get those monthly reports and you see that chart, that's calendar year. But for some of the stuff, I tweaked it and put it into school year, just to give you a better perspective. But when you look at this graph, you see years 2014 through 2018. They are all blue. Back in those days, we did not separate out youth assistance, which was the police referrals, the school behavior referrals, between that and case management and resource referrals. Everybody went into one bucket. So that's 2014 through 2018. Another thing you'll notice about 2014 through 2018 is we got under 50 referrals a year. usually landed around 45, 46, sometimes 47. And with the exception of 2017, which 2017 is the year that Carrie Ann and I both started. 2017, and I don't know if for those of you who were around, that was the year that we did not have an SRO at the high school for a good portion of the year. And so we kind of took on a lot of those referrals. 2019, as I mentioned, we went through the strategic planning process and we decided to separate out for data tracking, separate out our referrals into the 3 categories. 2019 is also when the township enacted the vape ordinance. And as you know, the high school is located in the township. So we also got a number of vape referrals that year as well. 2020, as you know, was COVID. So there's no surprise there that our referrals went down. And then starting in 2021 to present, our numbers have increased exponentially. 2022, we finished with about 180 referrals. And then for this calendar year to date, January to end of June, we're at a little over 100. So we are busy, which we want to be, because that means that kids are being identified and they're being channeled in the right direction to get the support and help that they need. Okay. If you look at this chart, this looks a little familiar to you because this is what is in the monthly program report that I provide. I just pulled out the different categories. And I also adjusted it for the school year. So this is September of 2022 until the end of June 2023. The blue represents the youth assistance referrals, and the green represents the behavioral support referrals that we get from parents, from counselors, social workers, and other resources. And so far for this school year, we received 187 referrals. So to drill down a little bit more, we look at these referrals by source. If you look at the all services, these are all youth assistance, case management, resource referral. So all of these 3 types of referrals. So the Northville Township Police Department is at 10%. The city's at 3%. Northville Public Schools is at 61%, and parent, caregiver, other is at 26%. So most of the referrals that we get are from the school district. And then you just drill down a little bit further and you'll see the difference between the youth assistance program referrals, case management, and resource referral. So for example, Northville Public Schools, for our youth assistance program, 78% of our referrals come from the district, and 85% of our case management come from the district. And then resource referrals, 24%. And then I drilled down a little bit more, one more level, to look at referral source by service type and school. And it's primarily, most of our referrals are from secondary schools. And you'll see Northville High School for all services, 37%, Hillside 40%, Meads 15%, and elementary 8%. One of the things I want to point out about the elementary is that this is new. We've never really tracked this data to this degree before. I haven't really been able to go back and play around that much, but kind of anecdotally, just based on my memory, we would rarely, almost never get an elementary school referral. And I think that it's wonderful that we are, because it lets our school staff know and our building administrators that there's another resource out there. This is the kind of stuff, when we get referrals from the schools, it's stuff that is beyond the purview of what a school social worker and a school counselor does. It's the things that is kind of outside of the role of the school. And so to be able to have a resource right within our community that understands our community, that principals, elementary principals can refer to is wonderful. Youth assistance program, most of our referrals come from the high school. It's not a surprise. Hillside 36% and Meads at 10%. Case management 26% at the high school, Hillside 16%, Meads 26%, and elementary 32%, which is wonderful. And then resource referral, high school 83% and Meads 17%. And then we're going back to calendar year here. I just put a chart together to kind of show you year over year all of our programs and services. I added community engagement and other because sometimes we do things that we need to capture, but they don't necessarily fit into our 6 core areas of support. These are things like Northville Cares, Color Run sponsorship, NPAS, back to school support, the Hillside Spelling Bee, just to name a few. And then, excuse me, finally, we are grateful for the opportunity to come tonight and share with you like a deeper dive of NYN, and I hope you learned something that you didn't know before tonight, and you gained a better understanding. It's important that as board members, you understand the resources that are available right here in our community. And, I talked about partnerships, when we went through a strategic planning and we wanted to focus on partnerships. During that strategic planning process, we changed our name to Northville Youth Network, with the focus on the word network, because we realize we can't do it all. The schools can't do it all. The community can't do it all. But if we join together and work together in partnership, we can provide the support that our kids need. Even down to our logo, I like to think that hand around there is not just Northville Youth Network, it's all of us. As you learn tonight, you can see that our partnership with Northville Public Schools is huge. It's important work that we do, and we're happy to provide the support to all of our students in our community. So that's it.
Can I ask a very basic administrative question? Is Amy Noth a former teacher?
Yes.
That was listed on there?
Yes.
Okay. I just met her husband.
Yeah.
He's a lawyer.
Yeah.
Anyway,
She's been on our commission since before I came here. So
awesome presentation. My only comment is incredibly useful, very helpful presentation, and beautifully done and delivered. So
thank you.
Really, I could probably ask a bunch of questions, but that would be my summary.
I just had a really quick question to echo what Sarah said. Thank you very much. Wonderful. I just wanted to know about in terms of counting, like if someone was referred for vaping, if they were caught vaping again, would they be counted as two, or is there another category that would be put in?
That's a good question. They are all unique individual referrals. We used to, back in the day, we would only take a kid once. We figured, he went through the program, didn't learn, we don't do that anymore. This is where the case management kicks in, because usually there's other stuff going on. And they might not go through the same, like Teen Talk, if they went through it once. Carrie Ann will work individually, and we'll start to pull in a little bit more outside resources. So if we get repeats, we look at them a little different way.
Okay, but it wouldn't necessarily be denoted in the data that they were a repeat person.
Correct. Yeah. Yep. But we don't have too many repeats. Probably single digits, if that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's so awesome, right? Obviously, I work with you at Medical Cares, but just to see the depth of what you know, what you bring, how you serve kids, and how you help the whole district serve the kids and families you're really lucky. So
thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. I really appreciate this stuff, because I always ask the question, when we see these numbers, and I always ask, well, okay, it's great you present this to the board, but what is it we should do, right? What should we be thinking about strategically based on these numbers? And so this is really helpful to kind of see what's in place, what's there, what's driving, where we're seeing it. And so Beth, thank you for what you do, but also thank you for coming in. It's been a couple of years. We should make this a yearly event.
Sure. Absolutely.
I'll echo that. I'm so grateful that you are here tonight, honestly, to present. I think, just like Jim said, we see the numbers. It's very easy for those to just become numbers, and for all that to kind of get, overlooked sometimes, given the academic and athletic and other types of successes and high points that we're getting.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm so grateful that whoever envisioned this in 1987, hats off to those people and the people that are here. Beth, I'm not surprised to see your name associated with another great thing in the district, but Amy and Carrie Ann, thank you so much. This is like model community kind of stuff in my mind. I'm not sure. I am very heartened by the fact that we do this kind of thing and we can present this kind of model programming for the rest of the world, right? So I'm just really grateful. I do think this should be more regular. Right. I know it's a lot of work to come in and present, but I really do just think it puts a whole nother kind of face on this whole program that you have. And the fact that the numbers are going up, that's heartening as well. Some people might be demoralized by that, but I think the fact that I'm encouraged by the fact that kids are getting to you, right? And you're seeing them, right?
Yep.
Maybe a couple of questions. What year was it that we didn't have an SRO?
2017.
That was 2017. So the numbers were, I don't remember what the graph said. That was a high spike and then it was down low. Okay, yeah.
And it was like the fall until about January, February, maybe? January? Yeah.
Till we kicked in.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just great to know that we have the kids who are having these very successful kind of high point type athletic academic successes, and that the kids who are potentially falling through the cracks, the marginalized, right, where you're finding them, whatever the term is that you're finding them. So I'm just extremely grateful for you guys and what you do, and whoever envisioned this in 1987, and you guys for bringing it to where you've put it today. Thank you so much.
I think my comment is I really appreciate the kind of retrospective review of the evolution of how services were brought in to deepen and extend your reach. And so that was really something to appreciate. The other comment that I have is that I feel very fortunate that the values and the goals that NYN exemplify are so aligned with what we have for our schools, in terms of support for kids. So we're thinking a lot about restorative practices and what we can do to help kids learn, and for, as we talked about with our athletic teams, falling down or not, achieving or being as good as you think you can be, or as that we know you can be, how we recover from that, what does it tell us about ourselves, and also how does it heighten our insight about the people around us too. So I'm very encouraged. I see that number growing, and that obviously we've got a good communication pipeline between NYN and the schools are utilizing you and sending you kids in need, and that's wonderful. I worry a little bit about, boy, is the wave going to be too much, or are you going to find yourself underwater, or so putting pressure on some service providers in your book of employees. So
Yeah, it's a worry that we have too.
yeah,
We are part-time.
Right. Oh.
And it might be, I have this conversation with Beth all the time. I mean, there's some budget issues, I don't think, we have support because we report to the township, and they provide the majority of our funding. We have great support from them. Probably within the next couple of years, we're working with some fund balance. So until that's where it should be, probably at that point, we might need to talk about an increase in our allocation. And so we'll see.
We're aware that the need is growing.
Sure,
This is a complicated world. Our kids are having to deal with a lot of complex issues, not only personally, but in, their place in society. And we just find ourselves, and at least if I find myself in my heart, wanting, to be able to have your resource be available when a child needs it.
Sure.
And
absolutely.
Not overwhelm you, I guess, respectfully.
Yeah. So important thing is whenever, and I don't know when it is, the next millage. And then beyond that, I might call on you for some support when I make the big ask in our budget allocation, probably 2027, maybe 26, something like that. So
one last comment, because I'm living the elementary reality. We've got high school families here at the board, but I'm noting that the growth in the kind of work that you're doing with elementary students, and to your point, Lindsay, that when the numbers go up, don't feel deflated or defeated, that shows that the system is working. And Lisa, you've said that to me before too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm so thrilled that you guys are doing that parent support group at Ridgewood that started there, piloted there, and then you're moving it into the other elementary schools that, we know that early intervention, it's
Yes.
not prevention, but it is early intervention prevents the problems from getting bigger, or, gives people the opportunity to maybe look at it like, oh, I wonder if this is what my kid is struggling with, and just bring some awareness that then services are available and can
Right.
support those kids.
Yeah, that's a goal that we've had for a number of years. I mean, back in the day, all the focus was on high school, because the high school kids, they're usually the ones that present with antisocial behaviors, whether at school in the community. So the focus was on high school. So then somebody had the idea, well, let's focus on middle school. That's where Camp Hillside, Camp Meets Mill came into play, and peer-to-peer. And the last few years, we've almost had no interaction with our elementary schools. And we decided that, we need to make this one of our goals, one of our annual goals. And to see that kind of bubbling up is really exciting for us too. To be getting those phone calls from the principals and the social workers, and then to also getting calls, we go around to all the PTAs and present, and so they know who we are, and to get those asks to partner for things, and we're really excited about that very much.
As a, longtime PTA leader, it's always been an easy ask to come to you all and say, can you come to our meeting and present? So I think the growth in collaboration at the elementary level is really important, so that parents know what's out there, what services, maybe they don't need it right now, but so that they know it's there. And I am really excited about the growing collaboration at the middle school level. So it's been a pleasure to do all of the overbooked this year with Carrie Ann. So that's been really fun, and I'm excited to see it expand. And we did, advertise those at Meads Mill, but I'm excited for next year to hopefully be able to really expand that and have that grow as well. That'll be really good.
I'd say in a year that I've learned a tremendous amount. Without a doubt, NYN is in the top 3. Hey, I can do this because it's cordless and actually look at you. This is for the masses out there. I think there's 3 or 4 people who want to hear me. But Cook School was one, having never served in an institution with a center program like that. Another was the history of Northville. We just graduated our 155th class. It's amazing. But the other was NYN, and to find out that it's 36 years strong. What I'm happy to look you in the eye and tell you, and I'm sure Beth and you have had conversations, but this board is not only fully in support of NYN, but the mission at all to be a truly excellent district, not only academically, not only athletically, I would argue most importantly to care for each other and for our kids. And to know that you have been a bedrock institution. We got to meet early on here for me, and to hear your background and to know that you're here. Thank you both for everything. And really, we all look forward to continuing to, but even amplifying, supporting our children, our families, and our educators, actually. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
All right, that brings us to our first, I believe, of 2 opportunities for public comment tonight. That's right. I will open it. I don't have any cards here. Anyone in the public, you have 3 minutes to tell us about your issue, going once, going twice. That concludes our first of 2 opportunities, and that brings us to number 9, our policy HR liaison, Ms. Prescott, please.
Very pleased tonight to offer motion number 130, that the board award 1-year probationary NEA teacher contracts to the following staff as presented: Anna Albolov, Anna Boyle, Madison Davis, Megan Gall, Meredith Goletsky, Nicholas Hart, Megan Cutts, Devin Madigan, Rebecca Pinzia, Sarah Roberts, Michaela Stewart, and Olivia Wren.
Support. All right, so I have a motion properly presented by Ms. Prescott and supported by Mr. Mazurik. Turn it over to the team. Mr. Mayhew.
Hey, we just got a few today. And we actually have a couple of them here.
Awesome.
We'll start with them. So we have Meredith, right?
Correct, yeah.
Meredith. So Meredith, actually she's a former student teacher here in Dalton. Yes, wireless. Beautiful. She was a student teacher. She was a former student teacher in our district. And when she finished student teaching, there was an opening that came, unexpected opening that came into the district, and she loaned her sub in there, and she impressed her principal and impressed everybody she's been working with. It made the class her own. I mean, the class was there was some rough starts to the class, and she made it her own. What we were impressed about her was she seemed to be innovative in her exuberance toward teaching and her stick-to-itness. And basically what we got from her was no matter what happens, she's going to keep going and keep persevering. So that really impressed us. Everyone, all the references, which include a lot of our teaching staff there, felt she's a good teacher now who will grow into a great one in the future. So Meredith, would like to say, welcome. So we have also Nicholas Hart, who's here, wearing his green and white. He was also a student teacher. He was a student teacher at Hillside. There was an opening that came available because of resignation. He is also new to the teaching profession, and he presented a lesson to the Hillside students during his interview that excited the students. I mean, it really did. And we had sat through a couple of those. That was part of our process where we brought a class in, and the class would sit, and he gave a very interesting social studies lesson and impressed everybody. Also, his knowledge of the building, as a student taught there, he knows all the staff. He already knew the kids. It will be a great asset to the district. So I would like to welcome Nicholas to Northville High School. Cook School. We have an SXI teacher, the name of Anna Boyle. As you know, it is getting harder and harder for us to find staff for that building. So we're lucky to find her. We were impressed by her enthusiasm for students, and she had an eagerness to learn. She's also a newer teacher. Her current supervisor describes her as a promising young teacher who will excel in a center setting. Anna specifically wanted to go into a center program, which is what attracted her to try to apply to Cook. They also describe her as a strong advocate for her students. She has about 2 years of experience in education, and currently she was employed by Southline Schools. In Northville High School, I had a resource room teacher. Again, it was a resignation that we had to fill. We found Mrs. Megan Coots for this position. She's very experienced. She has 20 years of experience, all in one district, and that was Clarenceville. We were trying to figure out earlier today who was from Clarenceville. That's what it was. Because of years of experience, she had a knowledge of how students learn and her ability to apply that knowledge. That's what impressed all of us. Her reference checks described her as very dependable and a hardworking teacher with a wide knowledge base. And they all agreed they would hire her back in a second if they could. Also at the high school, we had a science teacher that became open because of a resignation. Ms. Rebecca Penzia interviewed, and she impressed us all. She had a very, very deep knowledge of science. She's actually currently in a PhD program, and so to get her PhD in teaching of science. And she has a passion for this subject. She has 4 years of experience in education. Is currently a science teacher for Genesee School District, where she is also the department head with 4 years of experience. She's a very intelligent teacher who is eager to learn and genuinely cares about her students. One thing that stands out to me while our interview is, as we was interviewing her, she currently teaches Genesee schools. And when we was asking her questions, she brought up the Flint water crisis and about how they are starting to see those kids from the age group are coming to the schools now. And so their percentages of special education is, she said, in their building is 35 to 40% now. Wow. And so those kids are starting to bubble up. And so we had a good in-depth conversation about that. But we are pleased and happy to be able to make this recommendation to you for her. See, I've been skipping around, so I should have probably did that. The elementary. So this is the longest list. We had several openings, some resignations, some retirements. We will start with Anna Albulov. She was loved almost instantly. I will say I know her because I had hired her at Van Buren a couple of years before I had left. So she taught in our gifted program there at Savage. And then eventually she was moved to actually our lowest performing school at Rawsonville, but just because the way the movement came. And she has excelled at both. She has 5 years of teaching experience. She's a sponge. She is totally soaking up knowledge, and she's improving year after year after year. Olivia Wren, you might, if you've been here, she's a former teacher in our district. I'll make sure she's not here. She resigned. She was taught here for 11 years. She resigned for family reasons. We had, from everyone I spoke to at past evaluation, she was a great teacher while she was here. And her current teachers here that currently work with her are so pleased to have her back here. Nobody had anything but the highest praise for her. And I got some more. Let's see. I don't think I've ever had to do this many at once before here. Devin Madigan was also a teacher. She has over 10 years of experience. She's currently working in Wyandotte Public Schools. She was described by her reference director as a consummate team player who is a lifelong learner. She's extremely, extremely, extremely passionate about reading instruction. So that was the focus of the interview team's interview questions with her. Sarah Roberts, she has 7 years of experience and is currently at Whitmore Lake Public Schools. She focused on differentiating instruction, and she also had a background in project-based learning. She's currently teaching a 5th grade class, and she's been a 5th, 6th grade teacher. And that was something that impressed the interview team. Her reference described her as a collaborative, and she works hard to ensure the best learning outcome for all of her students. Michaela Stewart, this is actually one that we met through the job fair that we had Saturday. Rebecca had interviewed her at the job fair and was very impressed with her. And then we brought her in for an interview with our principals, and they were all very impressed with her. Again, she's a new teacher. I think what came across in the interview that even though she's young in the practice, her answers show a depth of knowledge that should not be there with the amount of years she's been actually in the profession. I talked to a cooperating teacher. She student taught at Doherty Elementary School in West Bloomfield. And her cooperating teacher describes her as very professional and passionate about her chosen field of education. Last but not least is Megan Gall. And she's also new to the teaching profession. Her mother actually was a teacher here at Northville. She did her student teaching at Holsing Elementary in Plymouth Canton. She brought an energy and a knowledge that she showed. Again, it was well beyond her years again. Her cooperating teacher describes her also as a team player that will make a wonderful addition to any team. So that's all 12 of them. And we are thoroughly pleased to be able to make these recommendations to the board.
Working incredibly hard.
Yeah.
So, hats off to you.
I think we should say out loud that we had over 200 applicants for some of these positions. Many of these positions that were just discussed. Also notable the experience and then your work to get personal feedback about what we can expect from these people. Really appreciate that. That's very helpful. But yeah.
Great job. Oh, 12 in total. Did you miss Madison Davis?
I missed the most. I know she was. I'm good. She reminded me that's hers. I skipped right over it. The school psychologist.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. There it is.
This is like a unicorn position, and that position has been posted for months, and I believe we only had 3 applicants, maybe. And we were very lucky. Miss Madison Davis was actually, she applied. She's currently in Texas, so we actually did a virtual interview with her. She's moving back to the area. She has 7 years experience. The team was impressed by the fact. I think she had a thorough knowledge of the testing and assessments that's very important for the school psychologist to have. Prior to being in Texas, she was a school psychologist in Kalamazoo. All the reference checks came back saying that she is top notch in paperwork and testing, and they mentioned her ability to build a rapport with all of her students. So I got your psychologist in. I forgot about that one. Thank you very much for your time.
Any other comments? A great field of candidates, former student teachers, former teachers, folks from great districts, people that you've hired their first time out, right? Van Buren Township, I think you mentioned. Any further discussion? Let's vote and welcome these folks in. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Congratulations to these great.
Welcome aboard.
All right, welcome aboard. Well, that brings us to another fantastic hire, I believe, number 10 on our agenda, and I will hand it over to Ms. Prescott again.
So this one is 131. I would move that the board award a one-year non-affiliated contract to Dr. Carrie Zielinski for the 2023 to 2024 school year as presented.
All right, so I have a motion properly presented by Ms. Prescott and supported by Dr. Campbell-Voitel. I believe we had, didn't we were briefed on this committee of the whole?
Committee of the whole, and I think even an email.
But further discussion, maybe a quick summary again of the benefits of this position and
Here we are.
how lucky we are, yeah.
Yeah, happy to. So I haven't done the level of recruiting and hiring that Abdul has done, but we did make some magic with finally getting Carrie to say yes. So Dr. Zielinski has been with us since 2013 in a coaching and I call it 1099, but it's a consultant position. So she's been working with our teachers and our staff and our principals. She's coached us through adopting a new math curriculum and making certain that it is rolled out with fidelity. And nothing speaks louder than the data that our students are presenting with our math program. So Carrie Zielinski has been significantly part of that, along with the Office of Instruction, certainly all of our teachers and principals. We ask her every year, Carrie, would you like to come and work for us? And she always politely smiles, says, no, thank you, but I just love coming here. So we've asked the question, Erin asked the question this year, and she said, let me think about it. So we got pretty excited about that. What that means for our teachers, moving from, that consultant position where we were kind of topped out at about 90 days where she could support our students. We now have moved into a 188-day contract. The majority, obviously, of those are when teachers are in session, where she'll be performing some coaching. We kind of have a best of both worlds situation. She is going to still continue on with some consulting. That is not in her contract here. We've reduced her number of days on her contract to allow her to do those support days with other districts. But we also feel that we're going to get a win-win out of that because it's going to allow us to do some collaboration with other districts that are similarly situated to Northville, and that will grow and deepen our teacher professional development. So everything is working out for us when it comes to math. And Dr. Carrie Zielinski, she regrets that she wasn't able to come today. She did want me to share with you that she so appreciates the board, this opportunity that the board is giving her, along with working alongside Dr. Brock and Aaron Boffman and all of the teachers and principals of Northville Public Schools. So on behalf of the central office administration team,
This is just such a huge win. Somebody we know, someone that's been here, we basically double their time with us for incrementally almost nothing. And so the value to be able to convert this, people don't realize what a price you pay in the consulting field. So to bring them on board is part of our theme of the best bang for the buck. I believe that's our motto in what we do for our students. And this falls right in.
It does. And just another little sidebar, we are looking at math curriculum, new adoption movement in our middle years, our 6 through 8, and she's already started developing those relationships with our middle school program, and she's the one to support that work
Right.
along with us.
I was going to make the same observation. Obviously, you have the facts about, we just invested some money in some middle school curriculum, math curriculum, and the fact that, the follow through, the implementation phase, that's the devil's always in the details, isn't it? So we're going to have this remarkable resource to support our teachers as they
Indeed.
roll forward. That's terrific.
Continuity, right? Same person, elementary, middle school, and is she also supporting high school?
She's not,
Okay.
but everything that she feeds into is the needs of that advanced learner at the high school, so.
Phenomenal, great continuity.
That makes a ton of sense. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, welcome aboard in a fuller way. That brings us to number 11, and I will hand it over to our treasurer, Ms. McIntyre, please.
Okay, I'd like to bring forth motion 132 that the board approve the 2022-23 final budget amendment as presented.
So I have a motion properly presented by Ms. McIntyre and supported by Mr. Mazurik. Do we have any presentation on this?
I think probably if I just hit the key takeaway slide, I think that'd probably be sufficient. Kind of the big items, what's really changed from back in March. We've had additional interest income, which is good news, another $360,000. This final budget amendment does include $4.4 million of one-time costs. We've had the 2 additional grants, even within the last few months. We've got another grant for our health resource advocate from Wayne County and another Section 3100 supplement grant. So that's some good news on the revenue side. This also kind of fleshes out our final estimates for staffing and salary and wages. We've got some good news there. We do have some higher utility and transportation costs that have flowed through into this final budget amendment. But all in all, this is reflecting now a surplus of about $700,000 that would bring our fund balance to about $26.9 million. So that's really kind of the key points. The summaries and the changes from the last budget amendment are also shown there, but you can review those if anybody has any questions on those.
And just for the record, we did have a full explanation and presentation on this. I forget if it was committee of the whole or the last regular board meeting, but one of those two. Yep. Further discussion?
No.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so that budget amendment is adopted and passes, and that brings us to, I believe, number 12. Am I mixed up here? Our 2023-24 budget adoption, and I will again hand it over to our treasurer, please.
Okay, I'd like to bring forth motion 133 that the board approve the 2023-24 budget as presented.
Support. So I have a motion properly presented by Ms. McIntyre and supported by Mr. Mazurik. We just had presentation, our public hearing on this in the earlier hour today, but any further discussion, highlights?
I would just emphasize that we're going to continue to put, 74% of our general fund money towards students. And so highlighting that is.
That's job one.
Yep.
Right.
Excellent. What was the number, 74? I saw it in the square.
74.5?
75.
75%. That's phenomenal.
74 and a half.
And we're keeping our fingers crossed for that additional state allowance fund.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I guess the one thing to point out is, hopefully we get some good news with the final school aid bill that's going to be, I believe, probably this week. We should, hopefully we get to see that. So there's some items in that school aid bill that I've kind of heard about that I've not reflected in this budget. So maybe there might even be some additional good news.
Do you think it'll be acted on before the 30th?
Yeah.
That quarter end? Not just
I'm not
voted
sure.
out of House?
Representative Cola's already mentioned.
Fine.
Sorry.
They go on break.
I believe tomorrow is when I was told, tonight I was told tomorrow it goes to the Senate for the vote And then once that's done, then our Governor Whitmer would sign it. They're a little bit behind, I think, from what we've gotten used to, but as long as we can get there, and hopefully the number they're saying we could get to would be fantastic. So keep an eye out on it tomorrow. And if it does go through tomorrow, Megan, Mike, or I will let you all know.
I mean, the last 2 years, I mean, I have to compliment, right? Since about 2010, we had a big drop and came back. I mean, it took us 11 years to get back the same funding level we had in 2010. And that didn't account for inflation, which meant we were underwater. These last 2 years have just been hugely important to us to finally actually get us above where we were in 2010. And, I compliment the team. We've always budgeted conservatively. And we're seeing the benefits now out of that, right? We're, greater rewards as far as our investments. We're able to actually run our schools on a flat, balanced budget, which a lot of schools can't. Are there, budget worries? Everybody has some budget worries, but I will say that this district is as prepared as any district in the state to deal with the uncertainties that come, in the next 2 years with the roll-off of the one-time funding. So, Mike and team, all of you, thank you for allowing us to be in this position, because it does mean this district can afford to make some decisions that other districts can't, and that's a wonderful place to be.
Well, thank you, Jim, for the boards that you were on previously. I'm sure you were thinking about what had happened and hoping that didn't repeat in the future. So thank you for keeping your eye on that as you try to recover from.
It's a distasteful period that Mike remembers that none of us ever want to go back to.
Yeah.
And we will fight tooth and nail to never let that happen again.
I need to say, having done this for 30 years and having a Board of Education that has financial acumen, and past board members who are no longer here at this table, but I know worked on mechanisms to set up predictability in how our budget would work. To a team that Mike, I know, will tell me he's privileged to lead, and he has a great team, and he'll tell me that every day. This doesn't happen by accident. And I'm going to hold this up just because I'm going to make him sign it for me, which is the growth there on that, and that's what Jim was referencing, or Mr. Mazurik. And obviously, all of these materials are available to the public, and they can go ahead and take a look. But if you really want to feel good about what's occurred from 10 to today, go to slide 23 on historical fund balance, look it up. And I think you'll find a lot of joy in seeing that.
On a night full of highlights, I mean, this is another one. Thank you to the finance team for items number 11 and 12 tonight. Great work. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor of adoption? Aye. Any opposed? Well, that passes. Thank you so much for that. And a little icing on the cake for our treasurer, number 13, our forklift purchase.
All right. Don't say he never gave you anything.
That's right.
I'd like to bring forth motion 134 that the board authorize the administration to purchase a Dosan LG 0025 forklift from Morrison Industrial Equipment Company for $27,418.81, funded through the general fund as presented. Support.
So I have a motion properly presented by Ms. McIntyre and supported by Ms. Stewart. Any discussion on this? I'm sure that you discussed this in finance subcommittee, but
I would jokingly say that, we had a great effort where we allowed students to learn about the bond fund and how that happens. So this year we jokingly said, well, maybe the kids can learn and put this together to save some money. No, that's kidding. We're not going to have them actually assemble a forklift, but
I've read Steve's background information. It goes back to just the values in Northville that we do try to get as much useful life out of our equipment as we possibly can.
Right.
And when I read the part that said it's been tagged, it's out, it's done, Well, when a
Safety.
forklift doesn't have brakes anymore, I think you pull the plug, right? It's time.
This is called a classic now, made in the 80s, it's a classic, right?
Yeah, I do want to thank Steve for, he's kind of pulled together a vehicle replacement plan that, it's one of those things kind of behind the scenes. We kind of take things for granted that we have equipment that's going to plow snow and keep our parking lots clear during the winter time, that we have equipment to cut the grass so it doesn't, get tall, that we can, have a forklift that we can, use in our warehouse. So it's important to have those pieces of equipment. And I appreciate Steve having, the foresight to develop a good replacement plan to do this.
And it's bizarre to think about the unusual environment when a piece of a used equipment doesn't make sense to buy because the inverse order, like used cars are extraordinarily expensive. You can easily make a case for financially it makes more sense to get something new. And here's a perfect case for it. Did the analysis, looked at it and said, this makes the most sense. We get the biggest bang for the buck and you got warranties thrown in. So great research.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Congratulations on the forklift. And that brings us to number 14, and I'll hand it over to Mr. Mazurek, please, our liaison for instructional services.
I proudly bring motion number 135 that the board adopt the secondary grading practices recommendations as presented.
Support.
All right, so I have a motion properly presented by Mr. Mazurek and supported by Dr. Campbell-Voitel. This is an item that we've had a fair amount of discussion on, actually a pretty robust presentation on, I think, at committee of the whole. Mr. Bothman
went through this for at least an hour, kind of going through the proposals, the process, how they got there, the initial proposals, and then thoughtfully thinking of the initial proposal and how it was really revised to really fit our district the best.
Go ahead.
Are you sure? Because I have a lot to say.
No, go ahead.
Okay. So unfortunately, I missed the committee of the whole discussion on that evening. But I want to just thank Mr. Bothman for being very patient with me in my emails, phone calls, and then of course I was also able to meet with Dr. Weber to discuss this at length. This has been something that I've had a lot of time to think about and have been using a lot of my time to think about. And I am coming to the board to ask that we not vote on this motion this evening. I understand the intent of these practices is to provide clarity around grading for our 6th to 12th grade students and their families. I support this intent as both transitions to middle school and high school can be overwhelming in and of themselves. And add to that, our high school model, which allows student-driven class availability, however, does mean that students often get new teachers at semester's end. In addition, clarity around grading practices helps with mental health, as students should not be additionally stressed about work when they're trying to heal from an illness or focus on an exciting extracurricular club or athletic event. However, I have been unable to get past possible unintended consequences of these practices, specifically concerning teacher autonomy as it pertains to relationships with students, classroom management, and knowing how class curricula looks in practice. Top of mind for me, as it is for everyone, is doing what's best for students, and I am concerned that once teachers are held to these practices, that they could be detrimental to student achievement and mental health, the exact opposite of what is trying to be achieved, which is why I'm asking that we not vote. If you look at the practices, I have edits that I would suggest, and I want to clarify that when I say that edits, I use that term very loosely. I'm not meaning for them to be exact edits. I'm not meaning for them to be put in practice the way I'm doing this, but rather to demonstrate the clarification that I believe is needed surrounding them. So it's not saying that I'm suggesting this exact language. I'm more utilizing the slides themselves to iterate what I'm trying to explain and my concerns are. So if you look at grade practice number 1, which states Student grades must be based upon student proficiency with the course content, not non-academic behavior. I don't like the word must. I feel like it should be will, because I believe that this language puts the trust in the student-teacher relationship rather than putting the onus on the teacher and make it look like we're looking for the teacher to be enacting that. Also, my concern is that some non-academic behavior is not unrelated to class content. Listening to another student during a Socratic method final, treating lab equipment properly, or playing flag football as flag football. Practice number 2, which states student work will be accepted for a minimum of 80% of the credit earned for at least one full AB rotation beyond the posted due dates, unless the project unit marking period ends first. I believe practice 2 needs clarity around the fact that this does not pertain to an absence. This is for students who turn work in late. Additionally, I should be noted that in Schoology right now, a 0 may be used as a marker so that teachers can go back and change the grade. A 0 may reflect only that and not an end grade. So I believe that the at least part deserves an emphasis as well, so that students can work with their teachers who may believe that students should be receiving additional time beyond the AB rotation. If you believe that's redundant, I understand that. I just think that there should be more focus on the fact that students could get additional time, and that this is just a beginning marker and that it's not for students who were absent. Grade practice number 3, extra credit for non-academic behaviors will not be given. My difficulty with this just seems to remove extra credit, extra fun from the classroom, and especially as students are already overwhelmed with their workload. Extra credit points rarely move grades, but as rounding is not allowed at the high school, extra credit could be used to motivate and for students to demonstrate their engagement. I could see putting up barriers around the amount allowed, but to limit it altogether, frankly, I think takes a little bit of the joy out of the classroom. And the last one, and this is my biggest probably concern. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped one. Practice 4. My issue only with practice 4 is that is the language around assign that day, because I'm sorry, has this been changed?
Look to the proposed revised. You want to go to the revised?
I'm sorry. Yes, thank you.
I've only done that 400 times myself. You're like, what?
Where is it?
But there is no revised number 3.
Page 118.
Revisions were made.
Oh, thank you. Yes, provides the right. Okay, yes, thank you. My biggest concern about this one is that be assigned on that day, because often students may miss days where there was an assignment that had a due date that was given before they miss. So I think there needs to be clarity around the due dates that occur when a student is absent. So maybe adding even a work that was assigned or due, just that little or due on that day of the absence, would allow for students to not have to stress while, again, they are ill about missing an assignment that may have been due, like a presentation that they had to give in class that maybe was due that day rather than assigned. So some expansion and allowance for students as assignments are due. The last one, practice 5, I have concerns with around, again, I think that we should say that student grades will be determined by a student's individual performance relative to their curriculum, their class objective, and syllabus. We should never be comparing students to others, and adding this makes it look like teachers do that. Additionally, adding grades will not be curved is very concerning to me regarding AP and IB classes. A curve is simply adjusting student scores after a test or quiz given. Therefore, throwing out questions could be considered a curve, but after this would be the only type allowed. Additionally, we have 22 AP classes and 11 IB classes. Some of these classes are cross, some AP are also IB classes, so there's some crossover there, where students will be given tests that are themselves curved. Depending on the AP test, generally, 70 to 75% of the questions correct translates to a 5, meaning you could get 75% on an AP test and you would get a 5 on that test. So if our teachers use AP course material to give tests and quizzes, then students should be held to the same standards as AP, not to 6th grade art, which is not to demean 6th grade art. But it does demonstrate that these students are taking college level classes, and that should be treated accordingly. It makes me especially concerned for advanced math and sciences, as they are less subjective in nature, and I believe should be heavily encouraged for our current learners as they approach college. So I apologize for taking everyone's time on this. I feel very passionate about giving our students supportive clarity around grading practices, and that is why I'm asking for more time on this issue.
I'll start. I guess I'll just preface my comments, I guess, with a couple things. I consider this to be a big improvement over where we stand right now. I appreciate the hard work that the team put into this and the surveying the field of folks. I appreciate the presentation several weeks ago. I think, in an efficiency kind of from a efficient, and I'm curious to hear what other folks think. I think from an efficiency and a process perspective, maybe I missed them, but I wish I would have had personally these comments and suggested edits earlier, and maybe they were out there and I just didn't know it. And if that's the case, then that's on me. But I do feel like this is an improvement over current. I think it's a lot of clarity over some things that have developed or lack of processes and procedures that we've had around grading that have resulted, at least in my mind, because of remote learning and hybrid learning and Schoology and those kinds of things. So I think it's an improvement. I think it sets a set of sort of minimum requirements, not an absolute, but largely minimum requirements. But I really want to hear what other folks think. I hate that these kinds of things kind of happen like this. I wish we would have had more time to digest your comments. But what do other folks think? Sarah, it sounded like you were.
Oh yeah, I was gonna comment too, and I hadn't heard what Karen was gonna say, but I also will start by thinking, there was a slide about, the what's the delegation basically, what are we gonna do in this, and Aaron did go over that, and I think they did what they said they were going to do, and I really want to thank that team because I know people spent a lot of time, and RJ and the whole team, they always do such thoughtful work. I'm trying to collect my thoughts. I guess I guess I'll maybe say what you just said, Lindsay, back, if these comments came earlier, one of the things that happened was that there was so much intense work with the professionals, I'm going to call you, that happened before there was any board feedback, that this kind of came to us as it is. And there were some edits from last week. I saw it, especially to the kind of comments underneath, or at least I thought there was one. But there's other things that I did raise that Karen just said again that weren't changed. And I'm only one person. It doesn't have to change because of me, but I agree with her. And I raised those concerns, and then people kind of took note, and then they didn't change. So 2 of those would be, I share the concern with grades will not be curved. Grades will not be curved. It's just such a strong statement. And it does say this will not preclude removing an item or 2 if the question is found to be faulty. That is one of the changes I think that was put in there from my comments.
Yeah.
But I don't know what that is if it's not a curve. And it raises new questions for me, so if one student got those points, are we now are we taking that student's grade down because we're ditching those questions that they got points on? And it just raised other questions for me. I just don't understand grades will not be curved. And I hadn't heard the thing about the AP and you can get a a perfect score of 5 when you get 70 or 75%. That doesn't surprise me. I really worry about grades just cannot be curved. We did talk about, I completely agree with, if all the students perform poorly, we should be reteaching that and we should be paying attention to that. And I think if this proposed practice said that, that's what it said, like, oh, if everybody fails it, start over, then I would get behind it. But I think like just such a strong statement of it just cannot happen really worries me. And I don't understand sort of, like, I don't really know that we're saying what we mean here. Because if what we mean is don't pass the class because 1 out of 30 kids got it, then I think we're all behind that, right? Like that is so obvious. But what else are we solving for? And when Karen said unintended consequences, that did send a concern down my spine, I guess I'll say, because once you put these things into writing, to your point about it's an improvement, I agree with you. It's an improvement. I also think it touches every kid in secondary, so we should get this as right as we can. So another one that was a comment that I did raise earlier that didn't get changed was this issue. I raised it with the kiddo who went to the robotics competition for a week. And it was one that Karen went back to in revised practice 4. And I said, okay, so if there's a 3-day project and you work on it 3 days in class, so it was assigned before you left, but 2 of the assignment days are while you're gone, or I was also talking about people sick in the hospital, then you don't, would you get practice 4 or would you not?
It'd be excused.
And I actually remember Aaron talking about that, because this applies to non-approved, right?
Right.
So when you go to
No,
a
this is
state
excused absence.
yeah, I know, but when we go to an approved occasion, which would be like a competition or stuff like that, that's an approved discrepancy, right?
This is for approved. Excused absences.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, like, so you're on an excused absence.
Mm-hmm.
It's 3 days long. It's not, weeks and weeks long. So it's not an extended absence where the rule talks about that. But you're gone for 3 days. The assignment was assigned before you leave. This policy, does the negative implication of this rule mean you don't get the next full class period, or different question, are we not providing a standardized way of dealing with that because we're just not addressing it, right? Like, because the whole point here is to give us a standardized way of dealing with things. So I just thought, like, the tweak could just, I mean, like Karen said, like, why is it only for work that's assigned on the day of? And there may be reasons, like, that we weren't privy to what the teacher said, but I mean, I just lived it. So to your point, Lindsay, like, could it have been raised earlier? Well, I mean, my comments were raised when this first came to the board, and they're not in here. And I'm really worried about grades not being curved. And what 4 says. What the negative implication of 4, or why don't we address if, I don't want people to have to turn in their assignment when they're sick in the hospital. And I don't want them to have to turn in their assignment when they're on an approved field trip or on an approved, extracurricular. That's all. It's not a big deal. But I do think that there's some changes here that would be worth getting right.
And I just want to say if there was a procedural way that I was supposed to have done this differently, since we cannot meet as a group of 7, I'm not, please, like, this is about being new. If there was a way that I should have sent that out differently, please, if not now, at another time, just please let me know. I'm definitely open to that. I want to learn to better. And again, my use of the word edits, perhaps is the inappropriate word. I just meant that, if this is going to be pushed out to all the students, secondary students and families, I want to make sure that we are doing it with the utmost care.
My comment, we don't say that. I like it. So I'm wondering, Karen, just in the spirit of deliberation, when you looked at the process, though, that was followed and the stakeholders that were involved that met over an extended period of time, did you have any questions at all or concerns about the process of developing these?
My concern is born out of, I guess my concern was born out of the why and what the intent is. You know, what are we trying to correct here? You know, in terms of what was broken.
Well, inconsistency, so unfortunately you weren't here, right?
Well, yeah, right, so I know, but.
What we talk about is, there's a lot of inconsistency in our grading practices, so you could, in his example, you could have twins.
Yeah, I
Got the same thing, and and you can have, the procedures were not really specified, and so you could have two people being given very distinctly different answers to situations, and that's really not fair either. So this was really about bringing consistency, right?
But why is there a need for consistency 6-12? Why not 6-8? Why not 9-12? Because when you look at younger students, are we putting them under the same parameters as a student who's going to college next year? Are, and also that I also, to be completely frank, don't believe that this necessarily eliminates that, to the point of grades shall not be curbed. So, if you read that, said, well, that's it, I can't do anything, where another teacher might say, well, I'm gonna do X or Y. It's same with the absence. It says assigned on that day. Well, I assigned that assignment before you left on Tuesday, and you left Thursday. So sorry. I mean, that still can happen. This doesn't completely eliminate that.
Well, I mean, there's no rule that's ever going to be perfect, cover everything, potential extenuating circumstances, right? So I guess the only way you would say this is a step in the wrong direction is if you assume that there would be malicious intent of taking these new things and maliciously applying. And Aaron really talked about that, about, this is really meant about consistency, right? And, I know you had the comment about, the extra credit, but it's very clear that it's about non-academic, right? There can be extra credit. And we've never said that. Aaron was very specific about there can be extra credit, but we don't want to do things like you get extra credit, you get 5 extra points if you bring 5 Kleenex boxes in. And that kind of stuff actually happened, right?
Where you get extra credit for wearing it.
So that's why this was about non-curricular rated, but is there extra credit available, right? So again, I hear, we could, in business, there's a point in time where you've got to put a rule in place, you start working with it, and then as you apply it, you start adjusting, right? So I get that, so that's kind of where I'm coming from, but there also is, what we have today is not good either. And if this is actually moves a step positive, we'll be better off taking a step positive and then working on fine tuning, or do we stay where we're at, which is a whole lot worse than this? So that's kind of just my thoughts.
Currently, the practice is that each individual teacher puts it on their syllabus and communicates that with students and families. We do not currently have a practice where we as a district share a uniform 6-12 grading practice with the entire community. So I would say it's not like we're actually replacing how we are doing it. So it's not just replacing what we're doing or how it's going to be implemented in the classroom, but we're replacing we're changing how we communicate that with the community. And that makes me more conservative, wanting to wait for that, because if we were just saying to, okay, teachers, put this in your syllabus, communicate it this way in your syllabus, or communicating with teachers like, this is the teacher expectation that you do it this way and share this with your students. It's a different way we're going to go about doing it. And that to me, is what makes me more hesitant.
So I wanted to make a couple other points, but I can weave them in at any point.
It was off of Jim's point. Is it a step back? I don't think the dichotomy here is either this is going to be adopted or else we're all assuming everyone's malicious. I think that dichotomy is.
Well, no, my point was, I don't think teachers are going to take this and use it maliciously to go out of their way to punish somebody. I don't
No,
think that's-
nobody thinks that. I mean, nobody is suggesting that. But Susie teacher or Jerry teacher who, okay, here, let me give you an example. The high school, the sciences, where we want, all the girls and to fill up to half. We would love that. Okay, everyone, there's no more curves in any classes. I'm not sure people are going to take uptake on STEAM in the same way. I'm also, I don't know why you're sighing and laughing. I'm very concerned. You don't have a high schooler. I'm telling you, you go to high school and you tell kids they don't have any more curves. So there are going to be classes of people who can't get an A in the class. Okay, so then they can't go to the university of wherever they want to go. Is that what we're saying? Because I don't tell me why we're not saying
So
that.
what curve says to me is, though, that you have a significant proportion of the learners in that class that did not master what you taught. It's feedback. So hold it for a minute. It's not a criticism of the student. It's a feedback for the teacher to revise and reteach. So to curve, here's the question that's left in my mind, is if you curve, you're allowing a pass for that teacher to go back and correct the learning. Now, do we really want to turn out a product, a student who was only successful because most of the class couldn't answer 20% of the questions on the test, but we curved it, and now kids are getting credit without having achieved the learning requirements. So I see curving as a way to subvert good teaching. And not curving will improve the teaching because you have got to get your kids, you can't fail an entire class. Teachers will not live long and fail the entire class, so they're going to have to address.
So I don't think they will also would want many of their students to be able to get the A or the B, right? It's not just about failing, it's also about helping kids be
successful. That's how I read it.
Your test is given and nobody got better than a 80. That the test has been given. Can the test just be ignored and thrown out? No, because that would be us letting a teacher have a pass. The test must be honored.
Maybe there were faulty questions on it, and Erin did talk about that.
Yeah,
right?
and we always
If
do
there's a
item
test
analysis.
where nobody got it, then there's a problem there.
But AP has a mandated curriculum that they have to get through May. The idea of reteaching is not feasible given what the curriculum that is in front of those students. And if the College Board is only expecting you to get 75%, why are we expecting your students to get 95%? And our teachers utilize the AP prior questions for tests and quizzes. So then that makes it so the teachers are relying on other material that is not AP level to test and quiz their students, or finding other ways around it, maybe giving more extraneous assignments to raise those grades, which is, I guess it's not technically curving, but it's still grade inflation.
And it's also not governed by these rules, right? So teacher A with the twin and teacher B without the other twin can be correcting for this issue in different ways that we haven't identified. And so like the idea that you're just, do the kids get a lower grade? Curves raise grades. Do the kids get lower grades now because we're trying to correct for poor teaching practices? I don't see how that's equitable or correct.
I would think that in our district that we help teachers be better teachers.
I agree with that. You do that by saying, well, now your kids all get an 80 at best, so therefore now so therefore what? Like, why aren't we pushing in with different supports? Why aren't we giving them different, a mentor? Why aren't we helping them with their test prep? Why are we having the kids get an 80 to make a point that the teacher isn't teaching right?
Don't we
That's my
address
question.
that with the language in number 5?
I'll step back and just from a different angle, I'll say is there was a group of teachers who are much more experienced and much more knowledgeable than we are, right? We're talking from a parent worry bead.
Yep.
And they went through this over months, right? Went through this months. These are by far, and Aaron said there's like 25 other practices we got to get into. These are the easiest ones of it. I just kind of question whether we are smarter than that teaching team about the practices. So that's where I'll step back and just say, that's my question. And
I don't know.
Aaron answered them, but that's my thought.
I raised what happens if you go to the robotics, and Aaron was like, oh, I don't know. I'll take a note back about that. And it didn't change. And I'm not saying he's dumb or the team isn't amazing. It's just, I had just lived it. So it was one interjection. I don't know why, so does the board have, is there a reason we're voting on this tonight or isn't there? Because if the team was perfect and there's no point in our giving our feedback as parents and community members and volunteers, then why is it a board vote? Why isn't it just, well, the teachers did it and there was a committee and the process can't be impeached, so why are we voting?
Would we ever get
I don't
to
know
a
why
point-
you're, okay.
Well, to denigrate this extensive process that was followed, starting right from,
It's not denigrating
vision-
the process, it's wanting a say.
Well, then, that's fine, but then maybe make a recommendation, but.
I really don't want it to come across as I was denigrating it, and I don't, I wasn't on the board when it was brought in. I don't know how the committees were formed, and I don't know what kind of feedback you gave as the committee started, and what kind of, if you knew what kind of objective the committee was having from the beginning. I don't know how that process began. I just know here we are now, and we are asking our teachers to abide by these. And so I understand that it was a committee of teachers.
And
but
parents and students.
well, parents gave, he did do listening sessions, but it was based on these 5 as presented. It wasn't, the parents, as far as I know, were not involved in it from the beginning. And so correct me if I'm wrong, from my understanding, because I participated in one, it was a listening session on Aaron's part, which I did participate in. And he asked for parent feedback on these 5 as presented, not from the beginning of the process. Am I wrong?
I thought the committee was students and teachers. The original committee.
So at what level or what point in the process parent voice was asked? So anyway, to your point, I'll finish your thought.
No, that, I'm concerned about the idea of, I don't want it to make it sound in any way, shape, or form that I am not saying that we shouldn't have clarity around this, that I'm trying to undermine anyone's professionalism or work. But we are going to be presenting these to the community as a whole, and therefore the teachers are expected to follow these. And I just want to make sure that they are as clear as possible and are at the best interest of the students as they stand today. Now, there may be philosophies about grading and how we grade and why we grade and what grades mean that may be at the deeper meaning of this. But we have to, to Sarah's point about how the classes function, we have to meet our students where they're at in these classrooms. And I'm concerned about how this may have gotten maybe in a philosophical bent that maybe deviates a fraction from the experiences they're having in the classroom. Case in point is, I know we've been focusing a lot on number 5, but the idea of non-academic behavior affecting grade, how is that defined? How are we defining? So is non-academic behavior anything that doesn't surround me turning in an assignment directly? Does it, the points I made, like if I know how to play football and I get all the tests right but I go out there and maybe I'm doing a little tackling, should that not interfere? So how is that being defined? If I'm a parent and you say, well, your kid, he's been deducted points because they tackled someone, well, but my child knows all the rules of flag football and that's non-academic behavior. I just want to make sure that we're doing the best job of being clear. I'm sorry if I'm offending anyone, but I just feel too strongly to just have this come out as it is.
Let me step one or two steps back here. So correct me if I'm wrong, team, and then the board as well, but I think a year ago, when we go through our district goals and what's coming up the next year or 5, I remember the gentleman, and I'm forgetting his name, but this was something that we said we are going to be doing in the next year or several.
Ken Turner, right?
Ken Turner, that's right. And we said we were going to be revisiting that revisiting grading practices. Is it at the just district level? Is that there?
Is this the charge you're talking about?
No, I'm thinking back to the actual meetings. I think they were in this room, and I met with Mr. Turner and
The district goal.
The district goal, yeah. So that's where it comes from, right? So just I guess informational point on that. Yep. The number 2, I guess, and I'll ask it pointedly to those who want to step back and hold off the vote. Would you ever be in a place where you could vote on these? Like, could you get them into a position where you would be in favor of these? Or philosophically, you don't like, or you don't want, or you're not, or you have concerns or whatever about going forward with any number of grading practices?
No, I could go forward with voting on them.
I think most of them are very good steps forward. And I could vote right now on some of them. Some of them I think it's some tweaks for some clarifications that I'm thinking of. But I do think no curving to me is I don't know how I could.
Could I just ask?
Absolutely.
I'm among the new people here, so I'm going to ask a question. One of the things that as a well-functioning board, we have to be really careful about not getting into the weeds and to have trust in our central office leadership and the process. And I'm a little uncomfortable dictating word changes or editing a product that came through the process of people who I respect. And the last thing I wanted to say in response to several of you have already made it, I understand that this set, as it exists now, is part of a continuous improvement process with circles back to repair or to adjust, that was an understanding and maybe strengthened the decision-making around let's move forward and then adjust and continue our work. So it's not a done deal. It's a growth and a continuous improvement process. So it might be that there will be some wordsmithing going on, but sometimes we can hold up progress for shooting for perfect, and what's perfect today might not be perfect after we trial it and go forward. So I think those are just some questions I had about just what is our role? Are we staying within our boundaries and respecting the process?
I don't know what our role is if it's not passing policy. I mean, especially policy that affects 75% of our kids on September 5th.
I mean, our charge is strategy setting. It is not operational. It is not. I think we can give feedback on this and other things. And sometimes we do get into the weeds, and sometimes we don't. I take a lot of faith personally. This is just one board member, but teachers, the team, who I think is the best in the business, surveyed teachers. This is what they came up with. These are the top 5, and I take Aaron at his word. There are other practices that are going to be much more difficult, but forward thinking, and that move the needle in the way that I think directionally we need to be going. And so, I think I share. I think very well said, at least from my perspective. I'm not trying to steer things one way or the other. But I do defer on a lot of these things to the team, Aaron and the whole team, teachers, parents that were involved in this. I'm a little nervous about setting the whole process back and also setting a tone for what's to come for the next, 6 through whatever it is, 20 practices that are going to be proposed, that we put on paper. But what do other folks think?
I agree. I think that, our role is high level. Our job is to make sure that the processes are followed with fidelity.
I'm looking here, step 4, there were 9 meetings held. I'm imagining they weren't 15-minute meetings, right? That there was a lot of brain power put on this. I'm sure there were, I see represent all disciplines in all schools. I'm sure there were AP teachers and IB teachers who were involved in this. I don't know that I need to see the list of who the participants were. I think that, are there little things, not little, we don't know what the impact will be, right? If we say there's no grading on a curve. One of the things that I believe about our team is that when there are things that come up that maybe we're like, okay, I don't know if that worked out the way that I wanted it to work out, I do believe that they can also pivot and raise awareness of things that aren't working well. I think, does it seem scary to lead with this and make this change? I can see that. I think there could be some huge benefits to consistency across both middle schools and the high school. But I think one of the things we've heard too is that when kids, come from the 2 middle schools into the high school, they have had various different grading expectations and experiences, and then they funnel into these 9th grade classrooms, and they spend the first semester trying to figure out what the rules are, what the expectations are for grades. So to address your question about, why isn't it just 6 through 8 or why isn't it 9 through 12? I think looking at secondary and having a more consistent approach for grading seems like a great step forward to me.
So I guess, we'll figure out how we want to go forward one way or the other, right? Which is, we could approve as is. We could approve asking for some clarifications, or we could defer till, I don't know, whenever the appropriate time is. So I'll ask a question. At a high level, are the 5 items, do you disagree with the 5 items at a high level, or is it more providing some of the details? I know you wanted some clarity on some of the details, in the, not so much the practice, but I'm going to call the statement below it was what do we call the statement below it? It was more of a clarification of what the intent or what the practice meant. The secondary paragraph up underneath it, whatever you call that.
Explanatory.
The explanatory piece. Because I think there's a difference, right? If you say that I disagree, I got a real problem with the practice itself, okay, that's a pretty strong statement. Or the practice itself may be okay, but I'm worried about some of the implementation issues or how it's defined. Could we add some more details into the explanation category, for lack of what we're going to call that? That's another piece where we could specifically say we approve the 5 items, but ask Erin to add some more detail to the clarifications. I'm trying to understand.
Yeah, I really appreciate
Kid's point about getting into the weeds and wordsmithing. I think that's a great reminder, Kim.
I would have to say, frankly, I do have a little bit of issue, not with the grading practices themselves, but more alongside the implementation. So, I guess like I said earlier, the difference would be that previous to this, it would be a teacher, communicating with his or her classroom, 30 students before them, what the syllabus is and what the expectation is around it. So this is a shift in how we're presenting this to it. So because of that change and shift, it does make me more concerned about how they read to, to students and families. So is it possible that my answer could be both? Because no, I agree with you. Like to Sarah's point, there's a lot I could agree with and vote on. I know I mentioned a lot of points, but I'm always willing to hear others and wanting to learn and change my, not necessarily, reevaluate my thoughts. I want to be open to that. But if we're presenting them as a district, you're going to get all your forms in, your concussion form and your PTA, which you're all going to join form. And then you also get, and by the way, now here's the grading practices, that makes me more hesitant about wanting to make sure that we, are doing it in a way that is best for the majority of students. And frankly, I just feel like it kind of takes away that what we were leaving to the individual teacher or department.
So it's the academic freedom piece.
Huh?
A lot of times I hear that talked about using the term academic freedom, that's a hang up, a little bit of a hang up.
Yeah, and so that's why, since it's not going to be presented that way, that we make sure, I just want to make sure that we're taking in all considerations. And again, I mean, I'm very uncomfortable with the whole, this discussion makes me very uncomfortable because I don't want it to make it seem like I guess there's no way of having this discussion without making it seem like I'm questioning the work of the committee. That's not my intent. This is just.
Don't ever feel that way, because honestly, as a boards function really well when they question themselves. So don't ever step back. I think that's healthy to have boards question themselves. I find absolutely nothing wrong with this conversation. We'll decide how we want to go forward, but I don't think the conversation in itself is bad. I think it's healthy. So don't ever stop stuff thinking that maybe. You know?
I just don't want it to make it seem like I'm questioning someone's capabilities of professionalism or the intent behind it. It's just that I have concerns surrounding it.
Here's kind of how I think it is a really important conversation that we're having this. So I'm glad that it's coming up personally, because I do think it brings to a head questions that I think struggle with, and that is around strategy versus operational weeds. So I personally come out on the side of it. And it doesn't mean I trust the team. I feel like we have the best team in the business. That does not mean that they always come up with the perfect right answer that we would come up with. But I do feel like there is a danger of just getting too much in the weeds. That's A for me. I also think we do best and we do our job best when we sort of take bold steps. Making an effort around these grading practices is something that's bold, and there are going to be some eggs that are broken. To make an omelet, you have to crack some eggs, right? This is something that could be, if after a year of working with these practices, we didn't like them, they could be revised. Things are revised all the time. So I just think strategy versus getting in the weeds, trust the team, taking bold steps. And I also worry a little bit about the precedent that this sets, or the tone for the next set of grading practices. Us really getting in the weeds. I mean, we made one of the best decisions that we had to make earlier this year that was painful for all of us around STEAM and world language, right? I mean, that was a tough one. All that said, we can set this, we can revisit this, or have another, week or two to edit and tweak. But those are my concerns about us getting too in the weeds and what this does to the process going forward and implementation. But again, that's where I am. I'm not completely opposed to deferring this for some period of time, but I think I would only do that if I felt like there is, are you 99% there, 98? Otherwise, I think we should vote. But I don't know, others, again, this is a big one, so.
It seems like you kind of raised a philosophical question then, that as a board, where do we land on that, what did you call it, the academic freedom, or is that the right word?
Well, it seemed to be what you were saying. It's commonly referred to as academic freedom.
So I guess that's the question. It sounds like the committee of teachers was really working to look at some more, guidelines or guardrails so that people weren't too wildly different, so that, Mrs. Jones' Algebra 1 class wasn't very different from Mr. Bates's Algebra 1 class, and moving on through.
Again, correct, because I wasn't here, but wasn't that the construct that they were given? that we want to create this. They weren't saying things are wrong with grading. What do you think we should do about it? Wasn't the construct, we want to make consistent grading practices for 6 to 12. How can we do this?
Wow.
Yeah, the
I mean,
goal was
really.
Well, but there were issues that were identified that we had problems with. There were clearly different teachers, because there were no guidelines, were doing things differently. That's kind of accepted that was an issue. And parents who had more than one kid would see that.
But some of those, I think, are the least controversial, like accepting work late.
Mhm.
Like, I don't hear anyone saying, let's make every class accept work late and give them a certain amount of time. I think there's a tweak where, we could clean it up a little bit with, is it due, is it not due? But like, I don't, like some of those things, I just don't think, when you ask, like, are you close? I'm like, I'm ready to do it right now. I'm ready to do it 5 years ago. Like, that would be wonderful. I don't think there's any problem with a lot of these. I do think, so it's funny too, because sometimes you can flip to the other side of the coin, and your question about strategy versus operationalizing, I think Karen's point, and the way I'm hearing Karen's point is, these are getting in the midst of operationalizing. Like, we as a board are pushing in with a whole set of rules, telling every teacher, you cannot do a whole bunch of things you've been doing, change your operations right now, because we're like, and I'm seeing you nodding, like, I actually think I'm saying, like, policies that give you, your grading should be fair, your grading should not compare Johnny to Susie. Like if these were a little bit more sort of goals or principles, or this is what we're aiming for, or this is expectations or some other. But when you're getting into every classroom and changing every single syllabus at the stroke of one vote and one pen in 5 different ways, and there's 20 more to come, like, I think that is operationalizing a lot of like top-down stuff. And then there's a fair point, which is, but there was a committee that did it. So then, Lindsay, I guess to flip your point about the tone and the precedent, and you're worried about us being too overbearing, I have the opposite worry, which is us having too little content. Like, we told the committee to go look at grading practices. We said, create recommendations for consistent grading practices among and between teachers. If that created a body that just basically, like, we're going to say as a board, we're just going to respect what you do, and it's not really our business to kind of come behind that. Like, that feels like the board not, like, I'm a little bit, it's a little bit of a Frankenstein. Is this policy? Is this operationalizing? It kind of is like the old woman and the young woman in the picture to me. Because I think you can look at this as getting into every single teacher's syllabus.
But how is it different? Because actually, I do want to explore this to understand it. We do lots of policies, right, that are high level, that don't explain all the detail. And then there's a procedure which we don't manage, which is managed by the staff.
Yeah.
Is that different from this, right? Which is and actually, we didn't, as a board, we didn't drive down these 5 practices. What we said was, we should have consistency, right? And that there is not consistency. So make a recommendation to us. So this is not top-down driven. Make a recommendation to us about things that could be done to drive consistency within the educational practice, right?
I think you're hitting exactly
And
part
so,
of the difference here is that some of these are notional principles, like everybody should be equal, twins, certain work should be accepted, nobody should be compared, if it costs money, it shouldn't affect your grade. Like, there's some principles, but then some of these are very concrete and discrete to me. And then that's where I'm like, but what if there's this circumstance or that class?
But I wonder how these came up, since we didn't drive them right. The teachers obviously had a committee, and they argued this out, and they said it didn't, it took multiple paths to get there. So, they're the ones who said, these are some common things that we can agree with.
Well,
So that's kind of where I'm coming from, is we didn't do that, is they came to us and said, these are some things that we agree should be consistency there. And so I kind of do have some
I
deference to
think it's
that.
just the first 5.
Yeah, these are
from
just
the
the first
book.
5. There's
But there, no,
there's
no, but,
25 to go.
no, but
It's not like
it
someone
was
said, what do you
pulled
think?
from
They gave them a
the
book
book.
and said, what do you think of
It was
these?"
the
You know?
first 5 points in the
Right.
book.
Well,
So-
they,
President Wilson, if I may, we are spinning into hour 4 of the meeting, and if I could please ask for a 5-minute break so we could use whatever facilities we might want to use. I'm reticent to leave the room in the middle of this conversation because I want to provide value just by listening and giving you all feedback, perhaps after decisions are made. But I'm asking for a 5-minute recess.
Yeah, sure. Can we, everybody good with that?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Let's adjourn.
9:12, 9:17.
9:12, yep.
All right, thanks.
And Karen, don't ever feel when you bring something
Well,
up.
it's, it's awkward, especially beginning and not being here for the beginning conversations
Yeah, I know,
about it, but,
Trust me, he's here, I've
I
been more than
don't
awkward
like
more
the-
than 100 times. But that's what makes it, honestly, that's what makes boards work, is boards willing to bring up issues and discuss it. So don't ever, honestly, nip that worry bead of yours, just cut that sucker.
Cut it right out.
Okay, just cut that one.
Thanks, it's cut.
Example you
The
gave,
important part is having the
but
discussion.
we want girls in
Process.
science, so we've got
The
to.
process will get you to the right answer.
That cut me
I just,
a little like.
I understand that. That's legitimate. Just turn that off.
God, after being on vacation for a week, this is the worst thing I can do.
Pictures.
Oh, God, it was.
It looks really nice. It
was really
looks
good.
amazing. It's the complete opposite of my life, for sure.
Now I'm spoiled of having like cruise withdrawals and that.
That
Oh, my
looks
goodness.
exceptional, though.
But you know
It
what?
didn't just
When
look
you
like
don't
a
want to
regular
go home, that's a sign of a good vacation.
Yeah, it was,
Girls are so.
It sounded like it was 4-star, 5-star, all the way.
All the way.
What's this one?
5-star.
Is it the strawberry one? Strawberry cake.
I'm usually a chocolate person. And then
Yeah. We'll try them all.
But they're afraid of getting the seed.
I'm like the Italian mother-in-law. It's like, you know.
Fun to eat, yeah.
I mean, the philosophy that I read is that, or what they surmise.
It just reminds me of my mom. My mom only knew how to cook.
I'm
For
gonna
like
put them over here.
in batches of 50, so it would be like, but Mom, there's only 15 of us. Take stuff home, right? That's just the way it was.
Yeah, that's right.
Rub some
Most
dirt in it.
grandmas are like that as well, for sure.
And
We're
so,
moving away from that because
I agree.
what's going on in my life with my,
Well,
I looked at the class of, my daughter's taking this class of senior engineering project class next year. And I looked at, they do.
So June, did you, there was an anniversary, right?
The what?
There was an anniversary.
I think your birthday.
Oh, okay.
It was
So,
significant
was
birthday.
that the project, or did you get her?
we don't have much to discuss. Once we're done with this, we're pretty much done, I think. Unless folks have a lot of comments or questions after this. So this is kind of it's the last meaty topic that we have for the night. So I'm in favor of sort of straw polling. I mean, I'm getting a sense for where folks are, but Melissa, where are you on this? What do you think?
I think I have a question before I make any comments. My question would be, what are the ramifications if we don't vote on this tonight? Like, does this need to be approved and then pushed out to all teachers by a certain date? Or like, what are obviously, if we're changing secondary grading practices for the middle school and the high school, the teachers need to know in advance. But what's our deadline?
Yeah, Trustee Stewart, I'm going to answer your question from a technical perspective. And the technical perspective is that this would need to be voted on to give us ample time to build our communications and comms plan. We have that time. So from a technical aspect, no. To answer your question directly, it is not a need to be voted on tonight to make this go one way or another.
However, I'd say, because we're not going to have another meeting till July 27th. If you don't make a decision until July 27th, then the ability to roll it out at September 4th, 5th, 6th, whatever the date is, becomes really difficult. Not that it can't be done, just it complicates it.
You're saying if you don't decide by August. Yeah.
I mean, if you decide now, there's more time to do internal stuff and prepare. If you do it July 27th, which I think is our next meeting, then it gets, there's a lot less time, because it's, as of about August 5th or 6th, it's full on ramp up for the next school year.
Can I make a practice point? Oh, this is going against your straw poll. I take your point about input and second guessing, and I think that this timeline creates that tone that you're worried about of like not deferring or not caring. Maybe like seeing these somewhere in the middle of the 9 meetings as like a check-in, or this is where we're headed, or this is what we were thinking, for an opportunity for comment would be a helpful way. Because then we could have them saying, well, here's why we didn't go with some comment you had, or here's what we thought about that, or we actually reacted to that, but we did it a different way. Like, I do think that could be a way to, going forward, especially if there are more contentious or more forward thinking or more bigger leaps, like, I think that might help kind of my feeling about what is the board's role if this is too late. Like, if it's disrespectful to the team, but like if it feels overly Monday morning quarterbacking, then it feels like the input earlier into the system might be a good way to.
Yeah, that's kind of a tough one, because I'll tell you what, even though I heard some of this stuff in liaison, I'd have never guessed this was going to come up, this issue, especially after we, had the committee, the whole meeting went through it. I wasn't expecting this. I don't know. You never know when something's going to come up. I'll just leave it at that. So it's kind of hard to plan ahead, and stuff happens sometimes.
I do agree, though, for the next round, maybe a midway check-in, on the next 5 or whatever it is they're going to tackle for the next round, to have like a midway point check-in. I think that would be a useful midpoint for that.
I agree. I think that to have some sense of like, okay, what are the main things? What's the practice going to look like?
Yeah.
So the feedback I could give from a technical aspect is, I believe 9 to 10 meetings, no less than 2 hours each. The real back and forth and robust conversation and passion that came from several circles. The update, my opinion, in January would have been, we're still arguing. in trying to figure this out. And I can check on that and see. But this process, in my opinion, a good process isn't necessarily linear. There were people who had to leave certain meetings because they left upset because their point wasn't listened to or heard. They came back about a week or 2 weeks later, they conferred again. So the point of communication is received, heard, and will be attended to. I just don't want to get the hopes up of the board that somehow in January what we're going to present to you is going to be the same as it was in February after everyone comes back to the next meeting. And if
I think that's the point, right? Is that it evolves.
Right.
Right? Like you gave it to us, we gave you comments, it evolved from there. You came back. Yeah. I mean, it's either too little, it's either too early, too middle, or too late. Like, if we're going to err, I think it would just be better if we aired earlier. And it's not critiques. It could just be questions like, what will you do if this? Is that going to be addressed in this, or is that outside? Like, it could just be sort of like sprinkles. But anyway, I stepped in the way of your straw poll.
No, yeah, straw poll, I think I want to come back, I think again to, and I really appreciate your concerns, Karen. On the one about teacher autonomy and taking away teacher autonomy, or at least the concern about that. To me, anything we do in terms of a grading practice takes away some degree of autonomy. And I think it also relieves them of the burden of having to make infinite decisions about there's practices in place. So there's either the philosophical, like we're removing teacher autonomy, and could you be okay with that versus tweaking? I want to coming back to that, tweaking these practices, right? So maybe, I don't know, think about that one, but what do folks think about straw polls? I kind of love them. We've used them in the past. I mean, it's just a good way to.
You can always use the straw poll.
We can always just use a straw poll.
We do straw polls all the time without actually calling a straw poll. Just every person just kind of states their opinion, and by definition, you understand what the straw poll is.
I think this will be my first straw poll, though. I'm pretty excited.
Can we do it in like in 30 seconds? Where do you come out? If we're voting, where do you come out on whether we should defer this or not? And if we voted tonight, where are you on it? Right? If we voted on this, because I've said it before, I'm a big fan of unanimity, right? And then a collective board vote in favor of something. But this is just one of those issues that I think is revealing no distrust of the team or anything like that. I think what this reveals are some issues around roles, frankly, roles, and I think they're healthy. I mean, we had a whole consultant session about roles of boards, and I think this is just bringing to a head kind of an issue that I think is healthy for us to wade into. So, all that said, and I'll take feverish notes, and I'm sure other folks will, but let's try to limit it to like a minute or so on where you stand on deferring for another period, another vote until it sounds like July 27, if we can get there. And if you had to vote tonight, how would you come out? Is that fair to everyone?
Yes.
All right. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first just to get the ball rolling. I would prefer to vote tonight. I've heard some good points, and it's always a point about listening. If I was going to do this and just me alone, and that's not how the board works, I would vote to approve them, but give Aaron assignment to provide some additional clarifications in the, whatever you call that second paragraph, whatever that second paragraph is called. And I'd ask him to then give us a feedback, give us an update on July 27th. If it was my call solely, that's what I would do. So I would approve I'd approve as amended, because it's not what right now it's just as approve. I would approve, but with an amendment to have them update the clarifications.
Would you ask for specific clarifications, or just that they provide them and then?
Well, and
Based on what was
based on what we said here, Dave. I mean, it's pretty clear. We gave them some feedback if they could provide some clarification. So that's how I would do it. I would vote today and then ask an amended statement that we approve.
But you're talking about just some more detail in the explanatory
The explanatory paragraph add some details, the explanatory
That's it.
paragraph to take some of the ambiguities out. That would be my step forward.
So I would say that I don't really have any issues with the grading practices. However, I would personally vote to approve them. However, I don't think we should vote tonight because if there are serious concerns, I don't want to vote on something and then on a hope that they will be amended in the future. So I would say that we defer a vote until issues have been resolved. But I don't have a problem with the grading practices as written. Does that make sense?
You want unanimity.
I would like to
You want to
vote.
work towards.
I want to vote on the final product. I don't want to vote on something tonight in the hopes that it will be amended in the future. So,
Can I just ask, what will this document look like? It's obviously not going to be like this PowerPoint, right? So what is it going to look like? And at the end of it, beginning or middle or end, is there any like flexibility around, are these the 10 commandments or are these the grading practices? And there is always room to tweak one way or the other if there is some evil or unnecessary consequence that's found.
But you're violating your own rules. What did you want to do?
Straw poll.
Yeah, all right.
Straw poll.
Okay, but that's a good question.
I am here to answer direct questions, and I'm happy to, just as I did for
Is
trustees,
that a fair question?
just as I did for trustee Stewart. I believe,
How is it enforced? What is the?
Yeah.
I believe the
how
question,
are they-
President Wilson,
Yeah.
was what will it look like?
Yeah.
So those 5 statements would simply be distilled down to what those 5 statements are. They would be communicated not only by the district, but most importantly, they'd be communicated by the people who lead the buildings. So Mr. Koski and Mr. Jones, believe Mr. O'Neill, I'm trying to think if Brad was on that, he was. So all 3 of those building administrators who were in all 10 of those sessions would lead the communication to their staff around that, and that would be my expectation. And so also that would be put in the syllabi as well of each individual teacher. Does that answer your question?
I think so, but
Okay.
so how are they, to use your words, Sarah, how are these enforced? How are they seen? There's no deviating whatsoever from practice number 1 in terms of days? Or is there somehow envisioned some leeway or flexibility as we see
Yeah.
issues? Because there are probably infinite issues.
So one thing I will say that I heard within listening to those meetings was, I want you to think of this as really a basement, not a ceiling, if you will. These are a minimum standard of care that's an expectation for teaching staff. There are some of these that teachers could apply in ways that are even more, I would say, fair, consistent, and understanding. So the idea of practice, and somebody said this, that you revisit things, you see how it works or doesn't work. Did that answer your question?
I think we're getting there. What would be the ability for a teacher or a parent or student even to say, you know what, I recognize practice number 1, I see how this has affected my kids XYZ. Is there any way to grant an exception or next time to maybe grant an exception for a particular circumstances as it arises?
The notion of professionals being able to make those adjustments is something that our building principals understand, is something I believe in. However, there has to be, from what the committee came and what they presented to you as a board to vote on, is that notion of a standard level of care. What is the minimum expectation that we have across the district for each student who's a 6th through a 12th grader? If there are teachers who want to make adjustments that kind of go beyond that piece of it, of course, they're welcome to do so. But really, yeah, you just need to let me know if I'm answering the question. I'm trying to stay as away from adaptive as I can and just give you the facts.
Okay. Kim, who wants to go
So
next?
I'll go next. I feel strongly that this process that produced these 5 first easiest low-hanging fruit standards was rigorous And I have a great deal of respect for the brainstorming, the diversity of people who had input, the work in doing research around best practices in the science of student assessment. I also have a very strong belief that this district stands behind its grades, the students, the processes for assessing students, and that we are always looking to improve the accuracy of our student assessments such that the transcript that gets sent on to higher ed is deeply respected. And that is part of this effort in being consistent and being rigorous in the way we assess our students. And I would be embarrassed to say that our students in AP classes have to be curbed because they can't master the content, or any other bioscience class. And I have had a lot of students at the college level in bioscience classes. I guess what I'm saying is I professionally am in support of this effort as part of a continuous process improvement. And this is step one. I could vote tonight and be in support of these and have the trust that if there's wordsmithing or tweaking or somehow examples that fall outside these practices that need to be clarified, students with large, with exceptions, how we stumble across exceptions that we never even imagined when we wrote these standards, that we would, within the leadership of the buildings and in the district, that we would be able to accommodate adaptations going forward. And so I would be prepared tonight to, under those explanations, to vote in support of this effort.
Where are you on deferring?
I'm not wild about deferring, to be perfectly honest. I mean, I think that really shortens the time frame for implementation, makes it difficult.
All right, who wants to go next?
Skip. So I would say, I was a little bit confused by your two dialogues, because if this is the expectation, but then people can do even nicer things for kids, like more helpful to kids, then it felt like that loosened my threads on what's binding us here, which is consistency. And like walking in the building knowing that there's a floor that's consistent, but the actual when is my work due, what will the points be, like that loosened it for me. I was like, so.
And some of them are different, so to help with the confusion that may have been caused there, if you take a look at the notion of late work or what students, but percentage-wise, I'm not talking about time or when it's due, but what it's worth. So that notion of you can't penalize somebody down to a 0 and detonate their grade. So this work just as well, and this is a technical answer as well, Sarah, that I think will hopefully help each of you. There's a book that was used, but this body of work has been going on for about 25 to 30 years. And so it's a whole body of work that kind of came to this point on what are the things that harm kids in their grading and stuff. And that, what I would also offer is perhaps tonight or tomorrow after the meeting, and I don't want to bring it up now, but I would encourage all of you to look at the AP test results that just came out and look at the percentage of students in this country that receive the highest score, which is a 5. And understand that 5, for instance, in AP US history is tantamount to a 75% of content. I'll cut to the chase and let you know it was 11%. 11% of kids in the country who took an AP test got the highest score, and the highest score was actually pegged at something 25% below what the content should be. And so the wondering I have when I look at that, is that a model that we want to chase? Or is that a model that we want to look at and say, So it's easy. I can even send a link, or Megan and I can send a link tomorrow to each of you to take a look at that. But this is big. Like, this is worth the wrestle. I'm grateful you guys are wrestling with it. It really is.
I guess what I'm saying is your question was how locked in stone is this? Aren't there lots of exceptions? And if there are exceptions, then if there's not consistency, exceptions are good. Consistency is good. Balance is important. I mean, that's one thing that I'm wondering is like, how does this get balanced in the real world? And then, you know, if this is the basement, I'm just going to point out that some teachers might accept work for 100% and others for 80%. One of the things we heard was kids then play like which teacher gets what work first because they get 100% here and 80% there. And also the twins won't be treated the same in that scenario. So like all of these things, it's just, I think this is really complicated and I think we would benefit from knowing more. So I would delay. I would tonight, if I was allowed to, I would vote yes for 1, yes for 2, yes for 3, and 4 and 5, I would want some edits on. But I would be prepared to vote yes, like clean yeses for the 3 out of the 5 right now, because I think I don't think we're gonna get perfect, you know, consistency. And I do think we're gonna need some like grace to teachers. But I also know that affects some of the goals we're trying to achieve, so.
Yeah, I would say, given the rigor of our district, I think that moving of the coursework, right, in the district, I think moving towards these grading practices offers some balance that kids need and some consistency. I think that the committee worked very hard. I appreciate their efforts. I appreciate the professionalism and how they dove into this really big, really difficult topic of how do we get this whole, you know, secondary system moving in a way that is with integrity and fidelity and fair, as fair as grading can be. So I would be supportive of these changes. I would prefer to vote tonight because I think delaying it puts a lot of pressure on the team to hurry up in a short period of time to convey all of the changes, and I think voting now with the expectation of some revisions and some clarifications then gives time to get those revisions done before they have to launch the communication efforts, and maybe they will show it to us first before they share that, so that we, you know, can back that as well.
I appreciate that. Karen, what do you think?
Well, I guess I'm not supposed to base my straw poll on other people's straw polls. But what I feel like I'm hearing is that for those who are a yes towards this, deference or a change in it isn't really making a difference. So if the outcome remains the same, whether we vote tonight or we vote in July, then I would just to vote tonight. But I have concerns. I could vote I could vote yes on 1 as long as the word must was changed to will. I could vote yes for 2. I could vote yes for 3. And even for the slight variations, 5, I could vote with some edits. I don't like that not by comparison to other students portion of it. And I have, as we've gone over and over and over again, extreme concern about that not curving. Curves are used in our AP classes as it currently stands. I have a junior, so for the class of 2025, I gotta really stress that, you know, for that to be enacted as they enter their junior year, to be the first class to test that out. You know, and I feel like, you know, we're referring to maybe a bell curve. I think teachers utilize a variety of curves and a variety of methods to help students, but AP teachers are beholden to the AP curriculum for the AP test. So as long as we offer AP classes that give the AP test, I think that we need to take that into account for the education that's happening in the classroom. And IB too, but I'll be frank, I don't know as much about the IB curriculum and how
how that's approached. But some of those classes are the same, right? So like Calc 2 is actually IB second year math, or Honors Calc 2 is actually IB second year math, so that's the same class. It's just that those students get additional work to do, so.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it. I actually think this is a really good conversation. Like I said, I think that this philosophical issue is one that we should be reminding ourselves of, and whether we're straying properly or improperly one way or the other on the line, whether it's strategic or in the weeds, or whether we should just set that aside and just be in the weeds. I'm always in favor of just kind of driving forward, trusting the team, trusting the process, especially when it's laid out for us. I take a lot of actually comfort with some of the answers that we're talking about. And I do think I think there is a little flexibility. If we're going to communicate this through the buildings as appropriate, right? And then there's an ability to grant exceptions, not lots of exceptions. I think there's infinite possibilities of instances where things could be, well, the rule says this, but this we suddenly have quadruplets, and we have this national experiment that's going to come up forever, and we're going to have infinite instances. I think giving the teachers and the buildings a little bit of grace, and knowing that exceptions can be given to some of these grading practices. I'm for all of them, and voting tonight and driving forward and setting a precedent around how we're going to kind of handle the next ones, which are going to be tougher. But what it sounds like to me is most, if almost close to all, are on the side of voting tonight, and we would all vote pretty much yes, except for some edits to maybe 1, 4, and 5. And to me, I think that the 1, 4, and 5, the ability to have grace or flexibility or exceptions around those exists. I think we should vote tonight. Is that a marching order, the flexibility, kind of the ability to give exceptions? Something that we can make sure, or if folks agree with that, make sure is embodied somehow, or a kind of a feeling from the board that we want to.
Yeah,
make
so
sure
I mean, what I would hope that, not hope, what I need each of you to understand is that anytime that it's not, and I'm thinking of Rebecca right now and the policy committee, that and what her world is. Rebecca's bound to certain aspects of policy. If we look at Title IX, that is a non-wiggle room, non-negotiable type of piece. When we look at instructional practice, grading practice, anything like that, completely different. That notion is that you're in really a continuous, if you want to think engineering and you want to think product development, you're in a continuous feedback cycle and loop. There are things that are unintended consequences for so many decisions that we make. And we, at least I look at the team that I'm privileged to lead beside on the operations side of things. If we need to make an adjustment, or if something wasn't working, then we will make that adjustment. I'm really proud to serve beside people who don't have the hubris to think that everything that we do is always going to be perfect from go. And so I can assure you in the community that if there were things that came up in there that needed set adjustment, that was the case. I know that Mr. Boffman has availed himself to anybody with questions and wonderings over the past couple of weeks. And it's okay to not fully agree on everything or see everything the same way. Yeah, you're a board of 7 and you make your decisions on that piece of it. I'm privileged to lead folks and lead beside people who are eminently professional in whatever direction we're given. We're going to execute to the best of our ability. And that's that. So yes, adjustments or feedback would be taken in. If that was the case, if these were voted on tonight, or however you'd vote, or whatever you'd like to let the team know.
So I want to make sure what I just heard. So are you saying that teachers can curve classes if this is voted in? So like in the 2023-2024 school year, because you just said, things, we need to make adjustments, we will, and if things come up and we would take the feedback. So like what is the rule? Because I want to understand.
Let's take a look at number 5 together, and let's read it out loud. For those viewing at home who might,
Not as a rule, but like, I think Timothy's question was like, are there exceptions to the rule? And that's what I'm trying to understand is like, would there be classes that would or wouldn't be, like, just to get like super, what's the word, concrete
well,
for expectations?
yeah, on the pieces, you have to have flexibility within that system. Again, I would offer any of you to go take a look at the AP test distribution and take a look at what that means as far as curving and grading in our public schools. And if those AP tests, if they were given to kids in the high school classes, then from what I just looked in the data set, no one would pass. The physics passage rate is 8% for a 5 across the country. I would argue there's something fundamentally flawed with that instruction model.
I don't want to defend AP. I just want to understand when we leave here, because like, I don't want there to be, like, we didn't leave with clarity. You know what I mean? So
There would be flexibility, but the flexibility does not mean there were agreed upon aspects that group of 17 people over 10 meetings came up with, and that was what was presented here. So those were the agreed upon realities that at least that group came up with. I think there were things that, and I think we heard Aaron very passionately and professionally share with us. If every student in the class, if there's not one student who's got above a 75%, then something went fundamentally horribly wrong with that unit. And I agree with him. I will stand behind his statement all day long that as a professional educator, I would be insulted. I would be mad at myself if I gave an assessment that I had to curve 25% and then I just showed up the next morning and said, all right, let's go to the next unit, youngsters. So that's that.
Yeah, that's agreeable. I think that's the easy case, right? The hard case is a little, am I asking a question that's too in the way? I mean, I'm trying to understand, there's flexibility in interpreting these that doesn't bend and break the spirit of the core idea. Is that a fair statement?
Here's how I would say it. If there's a situation where you need to grant, there's odd things that come up with vacation days, or somebody who's sick or not sick or maybe sick and you needed an extra day or two or whatever, all that kind of nuance, that's where I envision exceptions to rules potentially. When it's something like grades will not be curved, I don't think an exception could be, hey, I teach science. Can I teach this? Can I grade this class on a curve? That's a hard no. In my opinion, the philosophical stance that we're taking is this. And if we have some of these consequences as qualified by, if entire groups of students perform poorly, we'll go back and reevaluate whatever we need to reevaluate in order to move forward and make sure that our kids are learning.
Somebody said this earlier tonight, but as a professional educator, at least the people I've been privileged to serve aside in my own work in the classroom as a teacher, I was never infallible as a teacher. So there would be questions that I didn't write well. And if that's the case, if it's 2 or 3 within that part, rather than tagging the entire class for something that I had a blind spot on, but there wasn't a massive gap in the learning, then I would indeed pull those out and adjust that. Technically, you could say,
too, by the way, so it comes out of the denominator. So
It comes out both the top and the bottom.
Yes.
In other words.
Top and bottom.
So then,
an AP class,
then you
often
lost
they
points
use
when some people
AP questions that they didn't even write. They didn't write those questions.
But they know what they are ahead of time, so
If
they
it comes out of the
can teach.
numerator-
They're trying to prepare them for the AP test.
You think they should grade on a curve because AP tests are graded on a curve?
Frankly, if, yes. I mean, that's what's currently happening, is that they're utilizing those tests and quizzes. I don't want to go down an AP rabbit hole, because we could be here until tomorrow, and I forgot my sleeping bag.
So I'd like to make an amendment to the proposal, to the motion. And I'd like to make an amendment to help us get forward that the board adopt the secondary grading recommendations as amended, specifically to add clarifying wording, specifically for items 4 and 5 as discussed in this room for extenuating circumstances. That would be my amended statement, is that we discussed this in detail. We have general consensus on 1, 2, and 3. that I would ask that there be clarifying wording specifically for Rule 4 and 5, as discussed in the meeting, to clarify extenuating circumstances.
And Mr. Mazurk, if I may add, just in a little bit of contact with Aaron, and this committee will be beginning again in September. So the same group that presented us with these 5 will be in place. And remember, this is the 3 people who lead buildings to the high school and both of our middle schools will be in place to provide feedback in a loop, whatever choice it is you have and whatever direction you choose to go with that. So I just thought that was information that might be helpful for each of you to know. Same group, feedback loop there, and so on. I'm not trying to sell anything. I'm just giving you a fact so you know you can make perhaps help with your decision.
Jim, I think we'd be getting ourselves into having big problems if we said we vote in favor of this, but amend it with the feedback that we've given tonight, because I think that's like very unclear and hard to get.
We do that all the time.
We
amend things with clarification statements. We do that. This will not break any precedent.
Do you
Ever.
want to?
I'm not disagreeing with the precedent. It's just in this instance, I find it hard to believe that there's a consensus amongst us on 4 and 5, and maybe I'm wrong, but there's a consensus on the language of 4 and 5.
I can listen to what they said. There were some valid points about it's not as clear as I would like it in 4 and 5, that Aaron could add some more details. Now, the question becomes is, in the idea of policy versus procedures, right? Where do you clarify that, right? You could have the policy say this, but then the communications that go out to the community and the students could add some more details, which I suspect you're going to have to do anyways, but.
Like an FAQ where you discuss.
Well, yeah, FAQs and whatever else. So, but I don't have a problem with, because I listened to what Sarah said. I listened to what Karen said. And okay, I agree. If I read that and I look at a couple of circumstances, could we add something to reduce ambiguity? But I philosophically agree on the 5. I can also agree that, yeah, there's some areas of ambiguity in 4 and 5 that we could add a little more detail to.
Can we, you know what, if I get to the heart of what bugs me about 5, it's not curves are good or bad, it's destabilizing past practice where, kids got a lot of A's and B's, and I just don't want to have 1 year where everyone got, nothing higher than a B minus, and then we fixed it a year later. Is there a way to kind of address that worry? There's no, the expectation is that, none of these rules should be interpreted to substantially depart from what Kim has pointed out has been a very successful operation of NHS with very reliable grading. Some sort of fail safe, in other words, in case a teacher, there's some sense that okay, well, I here's how I, teacher Jane, interpreted this, so I turned in my grades because I thought that's what I had to do, and it turns out you cannot get an A in physics.
And my word might sound weird based on what I'm saying. I'm actually concerned about rigor because it might sound weird that I say we should have a rigor. We need to have a curve to have rigor, but I'm concerned that not having a curve de-incentivizes.
Yes, because the solution to the 75% is to give really easy tests and to not have the pushing. But that is right. I've been sitting here what are the unintended consequences? What
But I mean, do you think if all of our kids took an AP class, all got A's in it, but none of them passed the AP exam? That's useless, in my opinion. That's not why I took it. So I do want to do is make the course rigorous to pass.
That's what I'm saying. I want to keep the curve.
She's saying you shouldn't have to pick between the two. You shouldn't have to pick between a 5
I'm
and
not
a
saying
rigorous
it's the
class.
only way. I'm just saying I'm concerned about de-incentivizing rigor by eliminating a curve. And I know that sounds odd.
It does.
You would say, oh, you want to, the curve makes it sound easier, but those classes are not easy, and so I'm concerned that But there are ways.
So how would
to
you
get an
edit
A
5 if you fundamentally think that curves should be instituted, should be?
Do you know how many of our students are getting 5s on the AP exam?
That's a question that occurred to me.
What, I mean, no, does anyone disagree with the first sentence of 5?
I disagree with after the comma. I don't understand the necessity of that, like not because, that, I think it's, I personally like it just as the student grades will be determined by students' individual performance, full stop.
Yeah.
Because as a teacher, that's what I should be doing. And the after the comma makes me feel like you're thinking that's what I was doing.
And I don't.
But if you
But if
wanted to
you're
keep it
curving-
in, I could then keep it in, but the first sentence, I like the first sentence up to the comma, but if, you know, that's just me personally.
But that,
Do we
isn't that the
think teachers
definition?
had this similar conversation when they were doing their committee work?
I'm sure it was much more
Yeah.
than this.
Right?
Yeah.
So there must be a reason that they said not by comparison to other students.
And the AP teachers are not writing to us in mass saying you're making a huge mistake. In fact, I don't think we've heard from one.
But here's my point.
Yeah.
So like if your students don't do well, you can go back and reteach. You do have a grade on record that's not great because maybe to RJ's point, you messed up your test or your test was handed to IAP and the questions are impossible. What is the fix for that? Is it a bunch of extra credit?
You
Is it
retest?
throwing the whole test out?
No, you could take the part of the test that was not representative of what the kids learned and you retest. You retest
So-
that part
So
and then you put the grades together.
student Sally got a 75 and now she got 100%. So is her grade, she got 100%. She mastered the test. But now her grade in the class is an 82. Is that what we're doing? That's what I'm worried about. I think it's great to retest. I think we should aim for that. I think it's honorable and principled. I'm just asking like literally what's gonna happen when you, like, do we allow tests to be thrown out? And then retaught and then we negate that number?
This is like, I think this comes down to like a Hillside Needs conversation, because that's what's happening at Hillside, and I don't believe that's what's happening at Needs right now. And I'm not a former Needs parent, so I can't speak to that, but that's already occurring in our middle school.
And I think we're in the weeds to the extent we are, because we have entered the weeds by putting a thumb on the scale of you must do it this way. So if it's creating consequences that I just gave of a math problem, it's because we are not we're entering every syllabus and we're redesigning the score sheet.
But we're also
Or-
saying, but the tests aren't the only way that kids earn grades, right? They also have homework. They also have.
We have in-class participation grades. I mean, there's lots of ways that add up. When you have a syllabus, you define how you're gonna get your 500 points, as an example. And it could be these tests.
Participation grade based on number 1, it says grades shall not be given on non-academic behavior as participation.
Well, it could be a
Participation is
presentation.
academic.
It could be, you know,
The
Could be.
non-academic stuff was bringing in a tissue box or wearing Michigan State.
Or going to the so-and-so museum, which not everybody could have do.
The why of why we want to do this.
But those are the non-academic
That's like
things.
everything that's happening, that's not, that is non-academic, involvement in the classroom.
All right, so just to bring it back, I think the majority of us were on the side of voting tonight. There were 2 of us that would edit 2 or 3 of these grading practices. I'm personally comfortable with that those edits that those edits or the instances that would be covered by those edits could be taken care of in like exception processes if necessary, if circumstances saw fit. But does anybody change where they came out? Or have comments on Jim's proposal around editing 4 and 5 consistent with our feedback, which I want to go there, but I just don't think it's consistent. And I don't think on number 5, Karen, you want grades to be curved.
I don't want the option to curve to be eliminated.
Is there any reason to suspect that the vast majority of teachers are opposed to these, or are they on board with them?
The feedback that some of the feedback loop that was shared with me was the fact that the 17 people, had thought about this, went back and forth about it, and the feedback was predominantly positive. I think some cautious optimism around these pieces. This idea that if we make big decisions that we'll ever get the buy-in of 470 people on any one thing is something that I would find very difficult to get my head around.
Can't get buy-in of 7, so.
Well,
You said
grading
it.
is a very fraught discussion for faculty. It really is. And if you're picking up vibrations of, that's adding to your concern, anytime you try to get everybody on the same page in terms of grading practices, it's a lot. It's a lot. And I give kudos to the leadership team that tried to put together an opportunity for diverse people to come together and to come to some consensus. That is huge. That's huge.
It is important work. It is, you're right.
And a little bit of the aspect in the room, because you weren't there, but you had some people who were all the way over on one side of it, other people were all the way over on another side of it, for like 4, 5, 6 meetings.
Yeah.
One group of people who will say, this is ridiculous if we take any points off for kids having a late assignment. Like, why are we doing that to them? And another group that says, well, we need to teach responsibility, and that's why we're doing it. And Aaron stuck with it. He stuck in that process and worked through that process to arrive at least what they presented to the 7 of you a couple weeks ago on that part of it. So I think it's important that you know that there was there was not agreement, to your point, Dr. Voitel. There was not agreement in the room in the beginning, and it took.
But you're not saying there's agreement at the end either.
I would say, yeah, what I saw in that room was that when they finally got to 9, this was something that everyone in that room could sign off and live with, even though some were like, no, I think we're not going far enough. And other people were like, I think that maybe we've gone a little bit too far. That's where these compromise pieces came in. And that's what you arrived at right here. And this is another level of kind of eyes on it and so on that you are all giving it right now.
So just for point of clarification, I'm just confused. So because there were teachers, just like there were student and parent, was there additional teacher feedback
It was sent to the entire district.
And they responded, right?
Correct.
Okay.
So I am not sure if we are voting on the existing as it says, or if we're gonna vote on an amended one. I have no clue what we're doing now. What is it we want to vote on?
I would say we were voting on the existing.
I was literally trying to do consensus and find a path to move forward that we all kind of go, we're kind of there. We can agree that we could move forward, but there was some angst on 4 and 5, which I think we could all go, yeah, okay, I can do that.
What would the amendment be? I'm all for it, believe me, or thinking about it, considering it.
I'm trying to figure it out. As amended, which would be adding clarifying wording to the.
Was this even part of it, or was this just for our purpose?
No, I think that paragraph is part of it.
Okay.
But what would that clarifying language be? I don't think all 7 of us agree.
Well, I think
Then
that is
maybe
the
only
point,
5 of us
is
do, but at the end of the day,
they're
it matters
gonna-
if you get 4. So it doesn't matter to me. We need 4 of us to agree. That's how it works.
Yes, no,
To the value of this being, whatever. We have talked about, I think we beat curves as far as we can beat it. The only thing I have, just in case it matters, which it may not matter to anybody. The only thing to help kids, and I don't think it changes it that much. The only problem I had with 4 is if a student has an excused absence, work that was assigned or due on a day of absence gets this good treatment. I mean, Karen actually wrote that. I had not ever. That's all it is that extending it to my scenario, right, where Susie's at the hospital for 3 days and therefore the due date is relaxed. I mean, it's not, I think it's in line with the whole intention and just maybe wasn't.
Well, the last sentence says absences should not put a student in a position where their learning is penalized and they are unable to catch up.
I get that. And what I don't understand if I'm a teacher is, well, okay, I read that, but this is very specific of it, like the main bold part, work that was assigned on the day. And in fact, that was what was added. And that was specifically added from 4 to the revised.
Yeah.
I just haven't heard anyone explain to me why the proposal that Karen made or that I raised a week ago or whenever we met, much longer than a week ago, like, is that objectionable to anybody? Is that to the administration? Is there a pedagogic or a problematic reason?
What would you change? Tell me again. I don't think I'm getting it.
So right now I'm looking at the revised proposed grading practice for Sarah. Is that where you're at?
Yeah.
Okay, if I could just, and it's just an exercise for the room, I'm just going to simply read the words because I want to make sure my team stays up right now. So I want to put some flourish in it, all right? Go throw some cold water on our face, Mike. You know?
Mike says, hey, I do math.
You and I have a big day tomorrow, baby. All right, so let me just read this, Sarah, and I want you to, I don't even want you to look at the paper. I just want to, please let me read this and pretend I'm your son or daughter's teacher in the beginning. So, all right. Excited to have you all here. I just want you to know that if any of your kids have an excused absence, work that was assigned on the day of that absence that is due during the same or next class period will be accepted for full credit for at least one full AB rotation after the student's return. Extended absences, so let's say you're going out of town for a few days, you have a hockey tournament, a baseball tournament, a robotics tournament.
In the hospital.
You can address that with me and we'll go ahead and attend to it. Now, so that's exactly as a teacher how I would handle it. Now, if I assigned your youngster something a month ago that's due a month later, and somewhere in that whole month, then they were out for 3 days on that within 30. Okay, then talk to me. Or if they come back and it was assigned 2 weeks before, yeah, my expectation would be if they were gone the day it was due, they would turn it in when they get back because they had that. If they were in the hospital, I would have absolutely no expectation that it would be due because they were in the hospital and they're in a hospital.
What you just said was they turn it in when they get back if they're out in the hospital.
Oh, I didn't say hospital.
Okay. I'll just finish my point.
Mhm.
What you just said was they turn it in when they get back.
Mm-hmm.
The rest of the kids get a full 1 A-B rotation. I'm asking for the kid who was sick when it was due
Mhm.
to get a full A-B rotation when they come back. Because when kids are sick, the whole rest of this, they have 4 to 7 other classes, whatever. So you just said exactly what my concern is, pretending to be the teacher.
I think I'm really confused right now because an absence is an absence. So help me, or somebody else help me.
What you just said was, if they're absent the day it was due, they can turn it in the day they get back.
Mhm.
My point is, why can't they get a break for being absent for the day like the kids, like this mission statement says, which is you have 4 to 7 other things.
Because I think in that situation, the example I gave is the assignment was assigned a month ago. And if they weren't there on the day it was due, then you turn it in when you get back.
And this was the joke I made when we were here. Maybe everyone else's students do all of the work 1/30th at a time for 30 days, but many students do the 15 days worth of work on the second to last day and 15 days on the last day.
Okay.
Can they have an AB, or can those kids have an AB rotation?
And that's where I do believe I said, and I can go back and look at the tape, like have a conversation with me as a teacher. If that's the case, that genuinely that they could not be there or available to turn it in, I'm not going to hammer a kid for that. If they were genuinely incapacitated or out, I have no interest in that. And on the detail aspect, the other option, I think, is then we just, if you don't put any pieces to that, then it's going to be, there is no kind of floor to that. I don't want to use the term basement again.
That's a straw man. We want the floor. We like the policy. The question is, what is wrong with my way of saying it? Which is also, if you're gone the day it's due, you get a day, you get a little bit of a break. That's all this is. It's not fighting the floor or what is here. It's making clear, because you actually just said it one particular way, and another teacher might interpret it another way. So why the resist? I don't understand. No one has explained to me why this isn't.
So if I'm a kid who's doing the last 15 days worth of work and I fall asleep and I'm not ready, I just have my mother call me in sick. And then I can get a full, what you're saying
You
is.
basically you get like 3 days.
Well, that
Yeah.
would be true if I had a test that day. So let's say I had a test that day. I'm gonna have more time to make up the test.
I mean, I guess
We're just talking about how long you've had the assignment due versus getting an assignment while you're absent.
This feels to me like one of those, like, is it better to let a guilty man go free or let 100, like one guilty man go free or whatever? Because, yeah, there might be people who cheat the system. I don't think we should set policy based on those people. I think we should set policy based on the kiddo who misses a day. I mean, the 30 days is extreme, but 3 days, 2 days, and you miss the day it's due. Why don't you get a break?
Well, I
don't get it.
It sounded like they can be addressed with the teacher directly.
That doesn't mean that it's not, just because it's not addressed here, which I think it's not addressed specifically here, means the teacher has the autonomy to deal with it.
So the teacher can then say, nope, sorry, it's due today. And and that's my science teacher, but Lisa's science.
What would you
teacher
rather
would
it be due, in light of the fact that it was?
So when,
Why
so
don't we
if a
just say
kid,
that no homework is due to the last day of the year and let kids fend for themselves?
I don't think that's
I know, but I'm taking it to the absurd for a purpose reason. There's gotta be rules that people play by.
But what's wrong with the rule that we're saying? I just know, I mean, well, then we shouldn't have any rule. Isn't really addressing, I think.
Maybe that just can't be covered with a rule that's easily digestible, because it could have been assigned, like folks are saying, 2 days before or 30 days. There's plenty of time to have worked on it.
But you can't see into the future. I mean,
We're not saying they don't have the ability.
You're just
to
saying it's
make-
up to them.
It's up to them.
Yeah, and that's.
Because it's too hard to, or they just haven't. Who knows what's on the horizon? I don't know if it's gonna come up. in the next
I don't
one or not.
believe there's
But
a
it doesn't
single
mean they
teacher
can't.
that if someone comes with a true extenuating circumstance would go, sorry, the rules are the rules.
That's happened
But there's
to
gotta
my
be an
sixth
extenuating
grader
circumstance.
This year, I'm telling you, this isn't just made up. This happened. And some teachers were like, you weren't here. So it's you now. And it's like, but I was, okay, so that's what they do. That's the current practice in this district. And now we have a policy that's gonna address it for most things. But one thing it's not gonna address is you were absent the day it was due. And I mean, you could literally have kids that got more time because they were absent. Anyway,
Anyways, I'll withdraw my proposal because I don't know what the hell to do anymore. Guys, what would you like to do?
I think
I literally was trying to give you a circumstance to deal with 4 and 5, but we've all rejected that. So what would you like to do? I will vote right now just to go with it as is and just be hardcore. This is it. That's my opinion.
That's mine as well. I do though, Jim.
I went from being flexible to no longer.
Yeah, hold on. I really actually appreciate trying on that. I just don't think there's a consensus on how 4 or 5 could be tweaked. If it were anything else, we could maybe get there.
Call for the vote.
That's where I am. Any strong disagreement with that? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Can we do a roll call?
We can do a roll call on this, yeah. Dr. Campbell, what you want to do, or do you, do it, Megan?
Oh.
Yeah, you do the roll call.
Oh, gosh. Okay.
Pick any existing roll call.
Where's my roll call? All right, here. Trustee Melissa Stewart. Aye. Karen Meyer.
No.
I'm not going to call your titles. James Missouri.
Yes.
Lisa McIntyre.
Yes.
Sarah Prescott.
No.
Lindsay Wilson.
Yes.
Kim Campbell Voitel, yes.
So the
Motion passes 5-2.
Thanks all. That brings us to number 15 on our agenda, added agenda items. Ms. Irving, are there any?
There are none.
Dr. Weber?
No, but I do, if you'd indulge me in 3 minutes, I'd just be grateful. Is that okay? All right. So I wrote this out earlier and my feelings haven't changed at all. So, today is an important day for me personally. You've all welcomed me in after a year here and I'm really grateful for that. And I just want to say a few things before we go tonight. I think silent gratitude isn't worth much. So I'm going to look at these folks over here You're still with us. Thank you. So, Beth, the relationship with the NYN serving our students with special needs, I said this to the other day. When you go into a contentious situation, your ability to solve those difficult problems with legal counsel, I never even think about it or worry about it, and nor should any of you. Like, she knows her stuff. She goes into those situations, and I feel like our kids, families, and district are protected. Rebecca, you went into a brand new role this year for a new boss and a lot of responsibility on your shoulders, communications, the bond, all of the policy pieces, and having to make calls that you haven't had to make in the past, judgment calls. And I think in my observation this year, seeing that you've excelled at it, and I'm grateful for you. Megan, shepherd, steward, glue, smart, strong. Although you hurt your back last week at the football stuff, it's okay. Not playing, helping your son. I have to thank you for being a person that's brought this group together, as well as having three superintendents now in the span of 31 years is unheard of. Having two superintendents here that serve this community school district for almost, 40 years is really unheard of. You being here for 10 years, working with Mary Kay, and knowing that has been invaluable, and I thank you for that. I know Dr. Brock's not here tonight, but really, I think she sees the good in everything, and sometimes I really need that. And she's disciplined, dedicated, kind, forever a Mustang. I won't make the mistake of saying the year she graduated because I got admonished for that last time. And she's been a joy to get to know. Mike, you're a consummate professional. You're a gift to this community and the world. You get after it and do it in a way that's always looking for something that's better for kids and finding value in doing so. You treat people ethically with respect. You don't dress people down. You don't beat up vendors who don't deserve it. If they deserve it, it's okay. But always for the advocating for our kids and knowing that dollars are something that help us to deliver. Aaron's not here. I wish he was tonight. His grace and intelligence, especially, we were up against each other coming in here, and it could have went some very different ways, and it didn't. And I want to thank him as a human being for going into that, but also his breadth of knowledge is ridiculous. Abdul, you're new here. Your health and wellness, get after itness. I can't believe the amount of hires that you saw. I hope tonight people understand that you have been busting your tail to get us people and to do your job, and all the packets and all the interviews and all the process and all the calls. That's what really is going to make it. We are who we hire and we are who we keep. And I'm grateful for your counsel that you've given me, as well as another person who's coming from the outside, and you've spoken truth to me, and I appreciate that. It helps the kids. Steve Banchero is here, thoughtful, always looking out for the best interest of this district, and sees things in some really beautiful and interesting ways. And if you just look at his team and how he leads it, it's great. Andrew Piazza, again, not here, but just a pleasure working with him and his tech team. Guys, you guys are amazing. Always super kind. Judy Huggins over there as well. And for the board, I'll pivot to you all. And this is for Angela and Roland as well, who are no longer with us. But I just want to thank you each for your grace. As NPS has made a transition that frankly, as I'd mentioned, only your third superintendent in 30 years. We've graduated 155 classes. Change by nature is not an easy thing. We all saw that tonight. You all wrestled with things. You're all trying to figure things out. And you've shown me grace as I'm learning this gig, learning this community. And I just want to say thank you for each of you for your service. And, there are moments that we're not going to see eye to eye or agree on things. The piece is that we just have to keep in our head, and this is what I keep in my head, that these arguments and discussions we sometimes have are all coming from the same place. They are different angles, different pieces, but we are all here to serve kids. And I'm grateful for each of you for that. And I wasn't leaving tonight without saying that stuff. I don't care how late I'm keeping you, because again, silent gratitude isn't worth much. So to each of you around this table, for you all here and who aren't here, thank you so much for this past year. It's been a heck of a learning experience for me. So be well. I'm done.
Congrats
on
your first
Thank you.
Almost there. Yeah, nope. Wouldn't have made it without everyone in this room and people not here, believe you me.
Very well said, noted. That brings us to our second of two opportunities for public comment. We have no one in the audience here, so we will move to number 17, questions, comments from board members. Do we have any?
I just have something really quickly. So I stopped by the job fair, and I did not know exactly what to expect. I got there at like 3 something. They had already been there since 11, and there was still a line. And Abdul was telling me that when they opened the doors at 11, there was already a line formed when they opened the doors. So congratulations. I think that was a great effort, and obviously it was fruitful since we just hired someone who applied at the job fair. So congratulations, and I hope that we do it again next year, right? I mean, if it is that fruitful for us. And I think collaborating with our neighboring districts, only makes us stronger. So good job.
Did we arm wrestle them for the best?
There was a little talk between us.
Okay, we talked some smack. Okay.
Yeah.
Well said. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I joined Beth in the Northville Cares group this afternoon, and we watched the preview for a movie, Death is Not the Answer. Thank you. I'm so tired right now. Death is not the answer. I don't need to chuckle. It's obviously a very serious topic. But I think it's gonna be a great way to connect what we need to connect in our community. I did miss the first part, and Beth kept telling me, she's like, you missed the part where they talked about what the kids need and what the kids are struggling with. But I think it would be a great way to tie in kids' mental health with other people who live in their families who might also benefit from support, such as parents or grandparents, or just that whole link. So really excited to see how that comes together. So amazing work, Beth, for finding that film. And I'm excited to see what we do in September around supporting suicide prevention. And we'll be busy, but stay tuned. What is it, September 14th and 16th?
That's what we're looking at, where I already put calls in to the people to see if those dates work for them.
We are very lucky to have Ms. Sancher with all of her amazing connections and just real dedication to caring for our kids, which also includes caring for their parents. And the community beyond, right? That this film really touches veterans, first responders, I'm excited to see what will happen next.
Yeah. It's great to have you on that committee.
I'll only make one comment. Even though we voted 5-2 as is, I would appreciate communicating to Aaron at least the feedback on 4 and 5.
Absolutely.
I think that'd be really helpful going forward.
Okay, this is my reflection. I am so honored to have been part of this discussion, that so oftentimes we have easy consensus. We've done our homework and we get there in a smooth, uninterrupted way. But Karen, you brought your issues in total transparency and spoke from your heart. And I really appreciate that. And we've wrestled, and I'm not just saying this. I mean, I knew this moment was going to happen, and we had the moment, and I feel that we came through it. And I know, I pray that you're not coming away with a negative feeling about it.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not. Thank you.
It's hard. It's really hard. So, thank you to the board for the way we got through it.
I agree. Thank you all for the great discussion tonight. I really think it was meaningful and I think it was important. The only thing I'll add is I think that at some point in the middle, in this year, we talked about recommitting or something at the beginning of next year, this coming school year. Was it recommitting to our commitment to all? All right, I just want to make sure that we're kind of just tracking that. I don't remember if that is exactly what we talked about doing, but it's coming to me now. and we're at the end of the year and we got the
I really
new
like
one.
some of the language too. I don't remember where it came from, but really talking about commitment to each student. I don't know how that changes it, but I feel like that wording is, I don't know, something to wrestle with in our brain. Like to each as well.
All right, call us adjourned at 10:29.
Started your day in Baltimore.
Lisa, I need you, and I need you too.